Chapter 1293. Great Tomb Array Bastard. Lightning Dragon. Seeing Zhuo Wen rushing straight towards him, Mu Feng's eyes shrunk slightly. With a stern howl, the seal formed by his hand changed. Countless 9 heavens purple profound lightning descended from the sky, gathering together to form a gigantic lightning dragon. At the instant he attracted the gigantic lightning dragon, Mu Feng took a gentle step forward, entering the palace world. Rushing to the side of the heavenly worm, he stared at Zhuo Wen with fear in his eyes. The 10 doppelgangers formed by the heavenly worm were instantly annihilated by Zhuo Wen. Such combat strength caused even him to tremble. Swoosh! Zhuo Wen stopped outside the palace world. His gaze landed on Mu Feng as he coldly said, "Mu Feng, didn't you want to capture me? Now that I've appeared in front of you, why have you fled instead?" Mu Feng's expression was ugly. Looking at the 4 kills array around Zhuo Wen, shock and fear were revealed in his eyes. This array was definitely not something that a mere Zhuo Wen had set up. It was very likely that Zhuo Wen had obtained it from the inheritance grounds. "You've obtained the inheritance of the Emperor Tomb's owner?" Mu Feng's voice gradually turned dark and cold. "What do you think?" Zhuo Wen replied in an indifferent manner. Although killing intent was surging within his eyes, he did not dare to enter the palace world. The lesson of the Blood Devil was still deeply etched in his mind. He did not believe that his current strength was stronger than the Blood Devil. Even the Blood Devil had been absorbed by the heavenly worm after entering the palace world, and could only use the blood escape to escape. As expected, Zhuo Wen, if you have the ability, come in and kill me now. Mu Feng narrowed his eyes, and suddenly spoke in a somewhat mocking manner. Zhuo Wen's expression hardened slightly, as he stared at the endless black qi within the palace world, as well as the squirming heavenly worm figure within it. With a cold snort, he planned to enter the palace world. However, he was stopped by the Bai Fang. "Zhuo Wen, don't go in. The heavenly worm's strength is getting stronger and stronger. Furthermore, the palace world has already become the heavenly worm's domain. Its strength inside is extremely terrifying. You'll be like a lamb entering the mouth of a tiger if you enter." The Bai Fang spoke in a solemn manner. Zhuo Wen's footsteps paused for a moment before he frowned and asked, "Teacher, what should I do?" "Let's leave the monarch's tomb. This monarch's tomb was built by me back then. Although I am only a strand of my consciousness now, I can still activate the mechanisms of the monarch's tomb with the help of the celestial stone. This heavenly insect is too dangerous. Even if I have to destroy the entire monarch's tomb, I will destroy this heavenly insect," Bai Fang said in a low voice. Zhuo Wen felt a chill in his heart. No wonder Bai Fang wanted him to leave the emperor's tomb now. It turned out that he planned to completely destroy the emperor's tomb. This emperor's tomb was extremely huge, and the energy it contained was probably earth-shattering. Once it self-destructed, even if the sky worm escaped, it would be difficult to withstand the power of the emperor's tomb. "Go." After saying that, Zhuo Wen took a step forward and turned into a bolt of lightning. He left the palace world at an extremely fast speed. Rumble. At the instant Zhuo Wen left, the terrifying lightning dragon in the sky above the palace world roared. Under Mu Feng's guidance, it heavily bombarded the last chain behind the sky worm. Countless bolts of lightning filled the air. Strands of lightning were like little snakes as they continuously slithered around the surface of the chain. At the same time, the sky worm roared furiously and violently smashed its fist against the chain. Instantly, the sound of metal clashing rang out. "Break!" The heavenly worm roared. Borrowing the power of the lightning dragon, it began to continuously bombard the chain. Punch after punch, one could only hear a cracking sound. Under the combined attacks of the lightning dragon and the heavenly worm, the chain finally shattered completely, turning into countless Black Death years. Bang! At the instant when the chain shattered, the black aura in the entire palace world boiled and churned. A wave of evil and vast aura swept out. Mu Feng, who was standing by the side, trembled all over when he sensed this aura. His face turned pale. "So strong. Is this the full extent of the Lord's strength?" Mu Feng trembled slightly. At this moment, the pressure radiating from the sky worm's body was truly too terrifying. If not for his cultivation as an arcane heavenly master, he might have already knelt on the ground under this pressure. At the entrance of the tomb, Zhuowen seemed to have sensed something. Turning his head slightly, he stopped and looked into the distance. Staring at the palace world far behind him, his expression fluctuated unpredictably. "Let's go. I'm afraid that the sky worm has already escaped." "Let's quickly leave the emperor's tomb," said the Bifang in a deep voice. Zhuowen nodded. Without further delay, he took a step forward and walked out of the tomb. After exiting the ravine, he arrived in the sky above the emperor's tomb. So many corpses. Were all these done by the sky worm? The instant he appeared in the sky above the ground, Zhuowen looked down. His pupils shrank slightly as he saw the corpses of cultivators everywhere. Furthermore, these corpses were all shriveled up, looking just like dried corpses. Previously, Zhuowen's Buddhist avatar had left in a hurry, so he did not take a closer look. Now that his main body had arrived on the ground that was already in a mess, his eyes could not help but emit a cold light. Although he was not someone who bemoaned the state of the universe and pitied the fate of mankind, these were human cultivators after all. To have their flesh and blood sucked dry by a monster like the sky worm and die in such a miserable manner, he naturally felt somewhat displeased. "Haha. After trapping me for nearly 1,000 years, I'm finally going to come out." A thunderous voice rang out from the ravine below. It was like a great bell, ringing in Zhuowen's ears. At the same time, he saw that the strange black gas had spread out once again. It was actually sweeping towards the ground. "Let's go." Zhuowen's eyes were filled with shock. The 3 pairs of lightning wings on his back unfurled, and he instantly disappeared from the sky above the ground. When he appeared at the entrance of the emperor's tomb, the Bifang strand of divine sense appeared from the celestial stone. He formed a seal with his hands, and waves of celestial force were created from the celestial stone. Then, the entrance to the emperor's tomb was sealed. "Master." Not long after Zhuowen left the emperor's tomb, a clear voice rang out. Then, Zhuowen saw the huge demon god not far away step forward. Wu Dai flew out from the center of the demon god array and came to Zhuowen's side. She hugged Zhuowen without hesitation, causing the latter's expression to become extremely awkward. Yarrow Dai, who was in the center of the demon god array, quietly looked at Wu Dai and Zhuowen with a knowing smile. But soon, her gaze gathered on the celestial stone's illusory figure, and her delicate body could not help but be stunned. "Mars, Ter." Yarrow Dai spat out these 2 words with difficulty. Her eyes were fixed on the Bifang's divine sense, and there was a trace of mist in her beautiful eyes. She took a step forward and came before the Bifang. Her voice trembled as she said, "Master, you are really master?" The Bifang quietly looked at Yarrow Dai and sighed softly. "Yarrow Dai, didn't I ask you to lead the demon soldiers out of the emperor's tomb back then? You actually stayed in there all this time. It's really hard on you." Zhuowen had naturally told the Bifang about Yarrow Dai and the demon soldiers. Therefore, after seeing Yarrow Dai, the Bifang was not too surprised. Instead, it was a little emotional. "It's not hard on me, it's not hard on me. Yarrow Dai is willing to do all this." Yarrow Dai shook her head and smiled sweetly. Rumble. Suddenly, the emperor's tomb, which was originally sealed, began to shake violently. The huge pyramid on the Sea of Bitterness shook continuously, causing monstrous waves to rise. "Bifang, you can't trap me. Even if you seal all the entrances to the emperor's tomb, you still can't trap me." A thunderous voice resounded from the emperor's tomb. It was like an echo that spread out in all directions. It resounded through the clouds, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. "The heavenly worm has broken the seal." Yarrow Dai's face was slightly pale, and her voice trembled as she spoke. The Bifang nodded. Its eyes were grave as it said, "Looks like the heavenly worm's power has exceeded my expectations. It can actually shake the emperor's tomb." As it spoke, the Bifang's gaze landed on Zhuowen and Yarrow Dai. It said, "Zhuowen, Yarrow Dai, take everyone and retreat 1,000 miles away." Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He knew that the Bifang was planning to destroy the entire emperor's tomb. The emperor's tomb was simply too huge. The array within it was probably extremely terrifying. He wondered if the Bifang could withstand the array within the emperor's tomb. "Teacher, you." Zhuoan said hesitantly. The Baifang smiled and said, "Don't worry. Although the array within the Emperor's tomb is huge, and I am only a strand of divine thought, I can use the immortal stone to borrow your power to activate the array within the Emperor's tomb. Moreover, the array within the Emperor's tomb was already set up by me 1,000 years ago. Activating it won't consume too much energy." Zhuoan nodded when he heard that. He took Wu Dai and retreated in the opposite direction of the Emperor's tomb. Yarrow Dai also took the demon god array and retreated majestically. Boom, 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 boom. 1,000 miles away, Zhuoan and the others stared silently at the shaking Emperor's tomb. Their eyes were filled with seriousness because they discovered that the Emperor's tomb was shaking much more violently than before. Countless black storms swept through the embittered sea, as well as pitter-patter black rain. Zhuoan, channel all your mental energy and yuan force into the immortal stone and help me, the Baifang said to Zhuoan in a deep voice. Zhuoan did not hesitate. Holding the immortal stone in his right hand, the mental energy and yuan force in his Niwen palace flowed into the immortal stone like rivers flowing into the sea. Immediately, milky white immortal force erupted from the immortal stone and surged out. Zhuoan's mental energy had already reached the arcane heavenly master realm, and his yuan force had already reached the emperor realm. The immortal force he gathered was even purer and more vigorous than before. As the milky white immortal force surged out, it entered the Baifang's divine thought. The Baifang squinted its eyes and formed seals with its hands. The seals were so complicated that even Zhuoan felt his eyes swell up when he saw them. Tomb array, open. After forming the last seal, the Baifang slowly said these words. At this moment, the Theacher's tomb thousands of kilometers away began to shrink. The thick, yellow stone on the surface began to move, and as it shrank, the Theacher's tomb began to expand once more. Whoosh. Chapter 1294. Play. The depths of the Emperor's tomb had already been corroded by the black qi. Tiangu's body became even more imposing and terrifying. Countless tentacles shot out from the black qi. They were like thousands of ropes as they interweaved in the void. Oh! That old bastard has actually closed the Emperor's tomb. Perhaps sensing something, Tiangu's body paused. His blood-red eyes pierced through the void and landed on the surroundings of the Emperor's tomb. He could sense that the entrances to the Emperor's tomb had all been sealed. Boom, boom, boom. Not long after the entrances were sealed, Tiangu's sharp senses discovered that waves of terrifying energy had begun to surge out from the Emperor's tomb. The energy contained destructive power. Oh no, is that old bastard going to activate the tomb formation? Damn it. Tiangu's blood-red eyes immediately revealed a panicked expression when he sensed the energy from the depths of the Emperor's tomb. Tianjiyu had been trapped in the Emperor's tomb for nearly 1,000 years. His understanding of the Emperor's tomb was basically no less than that of the Baifang. Naturally, he knew that there was an extremely terrifying formation in the Emperor's tomb. The formation was called the Tomb Formation. It was something that the Baifang had spent a great deal of effort to set up when it was building the Emperor's tomb. Its power was extremely terrifying. Its purpose was to increase its power at the cost of destroying the Emperor's tomb to suppress Tianjiyu. Back then, Tianjiyu had used everything he had to completely suppress the Baifang, causing the latter's soul to almost scatter. He did not have any extra strength to activate the tomb formation. In the end, the Baifang could only temporarily seal Tianjiyu in the Emperor's tomb. Logically speaking, the old bastard Baifang's soul should have either been scattered or only left with a strand of his consciousness. In such a state, it is impossible for him to activate the tomb formation. Tianjiyu frowned slightly and muttered in a somewhat low voice. "Sir, I'm afraid that this has something to do with Zhuoan. After all, the Baifang's inheritance was obtained by Zhuoan." Mu Feng's eyes were filled with panic. He arrived beside Tianjiyu and spoke with a trembling voice. He could also sense the terrifying destructive energy in the depths of the Emperor's tomb. He knew that the energy was not something that he could endure. "Bastard!" Tianjiyu roared furiously. Immediately, the endless black qi within the god tomb began to shrink towards Tiangu's body. It began to form many black barriers around his body. As the black qi continued to gather, The black barriers began to become thicker and thicker. There were faint signs that they were turning into keratin. "Sir, there's still me." Looking at this scene, Mu Feng could not help but speak up. He was truly afraid that the heavenly insect would abandon him. "Get your ass in here. That tomb formation is about to be activated." The celestial insect didn't waste any more words. On the surface of the black barrier, a hole as tall as a person appeared. Mu Feng's eyes lit up with joy as he hurriedly entered the hole. After he entered the hole closed up and returned to its original state. At this moment, the Emperor's tomb had risen to a height of 10,000 miles in the outside world. A supreme and terrifying energy began to flow out from the Emperor's tomb. Moreover, the energy was becoming more and more terrifying. Milky white light began to appear in the cracks of the huge rocks on the surface of the Emperor's tomb. The light became more and more intense, and it almost dyed the entire Emperor's tomb white. Bai Fang muttered. Suddenly, the Emperor's tomb exploded under the milky white light. At this moment, the entire sea of bitterness seemed to have quietened down. The white light that filled the sky spread out and the originally dark sea of bitterness turned into a vast expanse of white. Everywhere one could see, there was only white, a dazzling white. The Emperor's tomb exploded. On the countless islands in the sea of bitterness, all the martial artists raised their heads. Looking at the Emperor's tomb that was filled with terrifying white light, they opened their mouths and revealed shocked expressions. The Emperor's tomb was extremely symbolic in the sea of bitterness. After all, the Emperor's tomb would open once every 300 years. It contained the coveted heart of imperial power, as well as other good things. However, many martial artists felt that something was wrong with the Emperor's tomb this time. After all, the disaster caused by Tiangu's clone was still vivid in the minds of many martial artists in the Sea of Bitterness. Now that the Emperor's tomb suddenly moved, rising to the sky and exploding, many martial artists in the Sea of Bitterness felt that something was wrong. Something must have happened in the Emperor's tomb. Hence, many martial artists in the Sea of Bitterness were discussing what had happened in the Emperor's tomb. The terrifying white light lasted for nearly half an hour before it finally subsided. The white light in the sky faded away, revealing the dusky sky of the Sea of Bitterness. The void where the Emperor's tomb was located was filled with spatial cracks. Terrifying hurricanes swept out from the cracks. It was the wind of the void in the spatial cracks. It was extremely terrifying. In the region surrounded by countless spatial cracks, a lump of black paste was wriggling continuously. As the paste wriggled, it emitted an extremely frightening and sinister sound. Bai Fang, Zhuowen, both of you deserve to die. How dare you trick me? 1,000 miles away, Zhuowen and the Bai Fang's pupils shrank. Under such a terrifying tomb array, this Tianji Yu was still alive. How could this fellow's life force be so vigorous? With great difficulty, Mu Feng squeezed his way out of the wriggling paste. His face was as pale as snow, while his eyes were filled with shock and fear. The great burial formation was too terrifying. Even though the heavenly insect had unleashed all of its abilities to create an exceedingly thick black barrier, it was still seriously injured by such a terrifying explosion. Boom! The wriggling paste body quickly regained its shape and regained the appearance of a heavenly worm. However, the aura on the heavenly worm's body was not as powerful as it was when it escaped. Instead, it was much weaker. Zhuowen could even see black qi continuously seeping out from the surface of the heavenly worm. After the black qi spread, it was annihilated in the air and disappeared. Clearly, the black qi was the source of Tianji Yu. At this moment, due to his serious injuries, his source was constantly dissipating. Bastard, bastard, bastard. Tianji Yu was flustered and exasperated. He said bastard 3 times in a row. From this, one could see how angry he was in his heart. After breaking the seal, his strength had almost reached the level of a half-saint. However, due to the power of the tomb array, he was seriously injured and his strength was far from his peak. This Tiangu's life source is so powerful. The tomb array can't kill him? The Bai Fang frowned and sighed. Zhuowen and Bai Fang, you old bastard. It's really the two of you. Die. After cursing for a while, Skyworm's eyes locked onto Zhuowenhe, who was a bifang formed by Zhuowen's divine consciousness. With a roar, its enormous body rushed over. Zhuowen, be careful. Enter the demon god array and deal with this Tian Jiyu together. Looking at the approaching Tian Jiyu, Yarrow Dai's expression changed drastically. She grabbed Wu Dai and entered the core of the demon god array. At the same time, she called out to Zhuowen. However, Zhuowen shook his head. His eyes were blazing as he stared at the approaching Tian Jiyu. He said, Senior Yarrow Dai, you don't have to interfere in this matter. Let me deal with this Tian Jiyu. Due to the terrifying explosive power of the tomb array, Tiangu's strength had been reduced to less than 10%. Zhuowen wanted to see if he was a match for Tian Jiyu. Yarrow Dai and Wu Dai were stunned. Soon after, Yarrow Dai shouted, Are you crazy? This is a Tian Jiyu. My master once died because of it. How can you deal with it? However, Zhuowen shook his head. He took a step forward and rushed directly toward Tian Jiyu. Within his body, a monstrous dragon roar resounded and rushed into the sky. Then, a terrifying black light rushed out from between his eyebrows. Roar. The black light rushed out and turned into a dragon's body. A pair of small sun-like golden eyes emitted an extremely cold light. The great nether saint dragon? Bastard, die. Tiangu's eyes were cold as he roared angrily. You want me to die? You don't have the right. Blackie let out a cold laugh. Its enormous dragon claws descended from the sky and heavily collided with the 12 arms of the heavenly worm. Immediately, a frightening force erupted. An extremely ear-piercing explosion resounded in the sky above the Sea of Bitterness, and huge waves rose from the surface of the Sea of Bitterness. How terrifying. That black dragon is too terrifying. It actually has a dragon's body. What kind of existence is it? On the island, countless cultivators in the Sea of Misery raised their heads and looked up at the great Nether Saint Dragon and Tian Jiyu, who were fighting in the sky. Their eyes were filled with shock. Whether it was the great Nether Saint Dragon or Tian Jiyu, the power that they displayed was too terrifying. It could be said that a casual blow from the two had the power to shatter heaven and earth. If an ordinary Emperor Realm cultivator came into contact with the aftermath of their battle, they would be annihilated immediately. At this moment, all the cultivators on the wonderful Spirit Island raised their heads. They naturally saw the great Nether Divine Dragon and Tian Jiyu floating in the sky. The shock in their eyes became even more intense because they also saw a figure on the great Nether Saint Dragon. With their martial strength, they could naturally see things in the distance. They naturally saw the figure on the great Nether Saint Dragon clearly. This figure was no stranger to them. It was the genius of the wonderful Spirit Academy, Zhuowen. Zhuowen had once caused a great uproar in the academy. Most of the cultivators on the wonderful Spirit Island naturally recognized Zhuowen. It's Zhuowen. It's actually Zhuowen. That terrifying dragon was summoned by Zhuowen? All the cultivators on the wonderful Spirit Island were shocked. After the shock, they revealed extremely excited expressions. They could all feel the terror of the great Nether Saint Dragon and Tian Jiyu. After all, Zhuowen was a member of the wonderful Spirit Academy. Zhuowen calmly stared at the great Nether Divine Dragon and Tian Jiyu, who were constantly fighting. After a while, his gaze fell on Mu Feng, who was not far away. He smiled faintly and said, Master Mu Feng, why don't the two of us play? Mu Feng, who had just experienced the burial array, had just recovered. At this moment, when he saw that Zhuowen was looking at him, his face couldn't help but stiffen. What? You don't dare? The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curved as he smiled. Me? Why wouldn't I dare? Without the great Nether Saint Dragon, how much strength can you display? Chapter 1295. Against Mu Feng. That's Grandmaster Mu Feng. Why does it seem like Grandmaster Mu Feng and Zhuowen are going to fight? When many cultivators on the excellent Spirit Island saw Mu Feng rushing towards Zhuowen, their eyes were filled with astonishment. Grandmaster Mu Feng was the most respected Arcana Heavenly Master in their excellent Spirit Island. As for Zhuowen, he was the most monstrous genius in their outer courtyard. When the two of them suddenly faced each other, it naturally caused many people to be puzzled. Zhuoan, Mo Yang and Bai Yang did not mention anything about Mu Feng colluding with the heavenly insects. After all, it was extremely complicated to explain. Therefore, they did not mention anything about it. They only briefly mentioned that there was a terrifying creature sealed within the Emperor's tomb. This also caused many of the auspicious Spirit Island's martial artists to have puzzled looks in their eyes. Perhaps Zhuoan had offended Grandmaster Mu Feng in some way? Although Zhuoan has already advanced to the Emperor realm, I'm afraid that he's going to be in big trouble when facing Grandmaster Mu Feng. Although many people felt puzzled by the scene of Zhuo when fighting against Grandmaster Mu Feng, the majority of them had strange expressions in their eyes. That was because they felt that Mu Feng, as a heavenly arcana master, possessed strength far above Zhuowen's. In the eyes of the cultivators on the excellent Spirit Island, this was a battle without any suspense. Seeing Mu Feng rushing over, Zhuowen's eyes gawked, before he laughed involuntarily and shook his head. From the looks of it, Mu Feng had completely attributed Zhuowen's strength to Blackie. Of course, if Mu Feng really thought so, he would be in big trouble. Zhuowen did not say anything. He formed a seal with his right hand and said in a low voice, "Slaughtering array." Boom. Zhuowen's right hand drew an outline in the air. The slaughtering array appeared in the air. Waves of slaughtering aura rushed out from the slaughtering array and turned into countless slaughtering sword shadows. Mu Feng's gaze sank. With a wave of his sleeve, surging mental energy gathered and turned into a huge mental energy hand. It came crashing down from the sky and smashed towards the slaughtering array. Bang! Under the bombardment of the giant spiritual hand, the slaughter array actually began to tremble. Your strength really does depend on the extreme abyss Saint Dragon. If it wasn't for it, you wouldn't be my match at all. Mu Feng's eyes were filled with disdain as he watched the spiritual giant hand suppress the slaughtering array, as he coldly mocked. Killing array diagram. Zhuowen completely ignored Mu Feng's mocking words. With a tap of his right hand, another array diagram appeared. This was the killing array diagram of the four murders array diagram. Murderous will filled the air. Countless silhouettes rushed out from the matrix, stepping on the void. They held the swords of slaughter in their hands as they stepped forward. Break. Zhuowen spat out this word in an indifferent voice. That terrifyingly powerful mental energy hand was directly destroyed and dissipated. Zhuowen took a step forward, and continued to charge forward with the slaughter and slaughter array diagrams. Looks like you have some ability. Mu Feng faintly knitted his eyebrows. With a wave of his sleeve, numerous yuan crystals shot out. In the next moment, 9 dragon roars that blotted the skies rang out from within the yuan crystals. 9 dragons array, break for me. At the instant when the 9 dragon roars rang out, 9 giant dragons shot out from the yuan crystals. 9 gigantic dragon bodies stretched across the void, giving off an exceedingly frightening aura. Killing array diagram, out. Without the slightest bit of hesitation, Zhuowen took out the third array diagram. Murderous will radiated from it. Upon sensing the murderous will radiating from it, a sliver of despair involuntarily rose within Mu Feng's heart. This was the frightening concept contained within the killing array diagram. Bang bang bang. 3 array diagrams appeared in the void, their might increasing by several times. Under the might of the 3 array diagrams, the 9 dragons array was actually continuously being pushed back. What? There are actually 3 array diagrams. Furthermore, each one is more frightening than the previous one. Looking at the 3 array diagrams that were floating in the void, their might increasing explosively, Mu Feng's eyes narrowed to the extreme. With a cold snort, he waved his sleeve. A blood-colored crystal shot out, and was sent into the 9 dragons array. Berserk, 9 dragons array. As his words rang out, the 9 giant dragons within the 9 dragons array started to glow with a blood-red hue. Furthermore, their bodies continued to expand, expanding by more than 2 times their original size. The 9 pairs of dragon eyes were filled with a frightening blood-red hue, while their auras were more than several times stronger than before. At the same time, their retreating momentum came to a halt. I'll make you feel complete despair. Taking a step forward in the air, Zhuowen looked down at the 9 giant dragons from above. In the next instant, his right hand tapped out in the air once again. This action of Zhuo Wen's caused Mu Feng's heart to beat rapidly. This fellow still has a fourth array diagram? How is that possible? Mu Feng cried out in shock, his eyes filled with disbelief. Killing array diagram. Come out, form the 4 kills array diagram. Borrowing the power of the immortal stone, Zhuowen condensed extremely pure and powerful immortal energy. He started to draw unceasingly in the void, before finally forming the killing array diagram. Only then was waves of destructive energy able to explosively shoot out from the killing array diagram. Whoosh! The killing array diagram shot out, landing in the middle of the massacre, slaughter, and extermination array diagrams. With the might of 4 directions, they formed the frightening 4 kills array diagram, while the killing intent seemingly filled the entire void surrounding the 4 kills array diagram. At the instant when the 4 kills array diagram was formed, the Berserk 9 dragons array started to show signs of fear. The 9 giant dragons started to whimper, while their eyes were filled with dread. The might and power displayed by the 4 kills array diagram was too frightening. Like a towering mountain, it firmly suppressed the 9 giant dragons, causing them to not dare to make any reckless movements. Puff! The 4 kills array diagram possessed an extremely powerful killing force. Under the might of the 4 kills array diagram, the 9 giant dragons didn't even have the chance to make a sound before they were instantly turned into countless blood foams. Impossible! At the instant when the 9 dragons array diagram was destroyed, Mu Feng spat out a mouthful of blood as he flew back. His face was as pale as snow, while the corners of his mouth trembled as he involuntarily cried out in shock. Impossible? You're telling me that it's impossible? Don't you find it laughable? Zhuowen sneered. With a point of his right hand, the 4 kills array diagram descended from the sky, rumbling towards Mu Feng. No, Mu Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. With a wave of his sleeve, countless yuan crystals shot out. At the same time, the powerful mental energy within his Niwen palace started to revolve at high speeds, causing the countless yuan crystals to revolve in a mysterious pattern, forming a nebula defense. Bang! The defense of the nebula was extremely sturdy. As the 4 kills array diagram smashed down, it was completely unable to shatter the defense of the nebula, causing it to appear as though it had stopped moving. Grief treasure seal. At the instant when the 4 kills array diagram stopped moving, Zhuowen unleashed the grief treasure seal of the 7 emotions treasure seal. A gigantic grief gushed out from the void. As a sorrowful aura gushed out, it started to continuously weaken the nebula, causing its defense to continuously decrease. Crack! In the end, under the continuous weakening of the grief treasure seal, cracks finally started to appear on the nebula. As the killing force of the 4 kills array diagram came crushing down, the nebula instantly shattered into pieces. Mu Feng extended both of his hands, while his mental energy formed an extremely sturdy defense before him. However, under the killing force of the 4 kills array diagram, this defense was completely useless, as it shattered instantly. In fact, under the killing force of the 4 kills array diagram, Mu Feng's hands were instantly turned into a bloody pulp. If not for the fact that Mu Feng had managed to escape in time, his entire being might have been annihilated into nothingness by the killing force. Arg! Zhuowen! Mu Feng howled miserably towards the sky, while his eyes were filled with shock and fear. He stared intently at Zhuowen, who was looking down at him from above, while his heart started to tremble in fear. Before entering the Emperor's tomb, he was an existence that Zhuowen could only look up to. However, after exiting the Emperor's tomb, he had actually suffered such a miserable defeat at the hands of Zhuowen, to the point of not being able to retaliate at all. Whoosh! Zhuowen took a step forward, while the 4 kills array diagram hovered in the air behind him. Waves of killing force were akin to wind blades as they flashed past Mu Feng's face, causing Mu Feng's heart to be on tenterhooks, while his heart was filled with anxiety. Zhuowen extended his right hand, before grabbing Mu Feng by one hand. Quietly looking at the flustered Mu Feng before him, he said in an indifferent tone, "Even without Xiao Hei, it seems that I'm still able to easily defeat you, and even kill you with a single strike." Mu Feng remained silent, while his face alternated between green and white, while a look of humiliation appeared in his eyes. In the past, Zhuowen was a brat that he had never placed in his eyes. However, at this moment, he was being held in the palm of Zhuowen's hand like a little chick. Such a contrast was something that he was unable to accept. Master Mu Feng has been defeated. This. When Zhuowen held Master Mu Feng and stood quietly in the air, the entire excellent Spirit Island fell into silence. After a brief moment of silence, an uproar broke out. Mu Feng, who was a heavenly arcane master, had been defeated by Zhuowen, who was merely at the first-level Emperor realm. This was truly inconceivable. Mu Feng, this trash. He's really useless. On the other side of the battlefield, Tian Jiyu, who was fighting with Xiao He, had naturally seen this scene. His gaze instantly sank as he cursed in a low voice. The injuries in his body were too severe, and the strength that he could unleash was about the same as Xiao He's strength. Neither of them could do anything to the other. Moreover, as the battle continued, Tian Gu's source energy was constantly dissipating through his injuries, causing him to become increasingly weak. His combat strength was slowly decreasing, and he knew that it wouldn't be long before his strength would continue to decrease. At that time, there was a possibility that he would be defeated by the great Nether Saint Dragon. Tian Jiyu, don't struggle anymore. You're already an arrow at the end of its flight. Xiao He said in a deep voice. With a swipe of his right claw, Tian Jiyu was immediately forced to take a few steps back. Great Nether Saint Dragon, even if I'm an arrow at the end of its flight, I'm not someone that you can take down right now. Die. Tian Jiyu coldly snorted. Rolling black gas gushed out from his body, and his 12 arms continued to expand. They were like pillars that supported the heavens, and were extremely terrifying. He threw out a punch, forcing the great Nether Saint Dragon to retreat. Xiao He took a few steps back, and his expression was somewhat gloomy. Although Tian Gu's source energy was constantly dissipating, his vitality was extremely tenacious. Even if his combat strength was insufficient, it wouldn't be easy to kill him. Looking at Tian Jiyu, who was unmoving, Zhuowen's expression gradually turned ugly. Although Xiao He's aura was extremely powerful and terrifying, he was exhausting the yuan power in his body. After such a short period of time, half of his yuan power had been exhausted. Zhuowen, take out the War God Catalogue and completely seal this Tian Jiyu. Chapter 1296. The slaughter of the War God. The Bai Fang could naturally feel Zhuowen's yuan energy being depleted, and he quickly thought of the Abyss Saint Dragon. After all, the Abyss Saint Dragon was too powerful. Zhuowen would have to expend a lot of yuan energy to maintain such a powerful existence in battle. The Abyss Saint Dragon was only at the peak of the First Heaven Great Emperor realm. Even though he had a dragon soul and had more yuan energy than ordinary cultivators, it still wasn't enough to sustain the Abyss Saint Dragon's endless expenditure. The slaughter of the War God. Teacher, are you planning to use the slaughter of the War God? But teacher, your divine will is still very weak. Can you sustain the slaughter of the War God? At this moment, Zhuowen, who was standing not far away with Mu Feng in his right hand, frowned in surprise. We can only use the slaughter of the War God. Otherwise, how long can you sustain the Abyss Saint Dragon? The Bai Fang said solemnly. Zhuowen looked deeply at the Bai Fang and sighed softly. With a wave of his sleeve, 16 stone tablets suddenly appeared in the sky. With Zhuowen as the center, they revolved around him. The 16 mysterious diagrams on the tablets glowed with a frightening light and a mysterious aura. The Bai Fang held the immortal stone and stepped out, arriving above the 16 stone tablets. He slowly formed a seal with his hands. His movements were very slow, but very clear. Zhuowen, I will now teach you how to use the slaughter of the War God. Watch carefully. All of a sudden, the Bai Fang smiled at Zhuowen. Then, his hands began to move faster. The hand seals went from simple to complex. Gradually, they became more complex. Powerful hand seals surged out, and the 16 stone steles below began to stir. Zhuowen quietly watched the Bai Fang's movements. A trace of sadness appeared in his eyes, but he didn't show it. Instead, he watched the Bai Fang's movements very seriously. Battle the heavens, battle the earth, battle the desolation, battle emperor, battle saint, battle Taigu. The Bai Fang murmured in a low voice. The corners of his mouth curled up. Waves of battle intent swept out from the 16 slaughter of the war god, filling the entire sky. Then, the 16 stone tablets began to expand, from their original size of around 10 feet to 10,000 feet. Boom! Boom! Bai Fang shouted loudly. He pressed down with his right hand and the 16 stone tablets, which contained a soaring fighting spirit, fell from the sky with a loud rumble. Xiao Hei, who was originally fighting with the heavenly insect, had naturally received prior notice from Zhuowen. At this moment, she decisively retreated. Before the heavenly insect could react, it was suppressed by the 16 huge stone tablets. Boom! The instant the 16 stone tablets came crashing down, countless mysterious symbols rushed out from the stone tablets, drawing a complicated diagram in the air. A supreme and soul-stirring pressure overflowed from the 16 stone tablets. What a terrifying pressure! Is this the power of the slaughter of the war god? Feeling the overwhelming pressure, Zhuowen's pupils shrank, and he could not help but mutter to himself in a low voice. Bastard, Bai Fang, you old bastard. How dare you use the slaughter of the war god? You are just a divine consciousness body. Do you want to die? The heavenly insect struggled wantonly under the encirclement of the 16 stone tablets. However, the 16 stone tablets were extremely vast and terrifying. No matter how hard the heavenly insect struggled, it could not break free from the confinement of the stone tablets. This made the heavenly insect both shocked and angry. I only know that you will not live, Bai Fang said indifferently. He took a step forward and arrived above the 16 stone tablets. The celestial energy gushing out from the celestial stones was gathered under his right palm. Then, he slammed it down. Instantly, a powerful and vast energy lit up from the 16 stone tablets. No. The slaughter of the war god produced an extremely terrifying destructive energy. The center of the 16 stone tablets was covered by a vast expanse of white energy. At a glance, it was impossible to see the end of it. Only the heavenly insect's shrill cries could be heard echoing in the air. Above the stone tablets, Bai Fang was expressionless. He continuously channeled his celestial energy into the slaughter of the war god. As he channeled his celestial energy into the slaughter of the war god, the body formed from his divine consciousness constantly faded and dimmed. His presence grew weaker and weaker. Teacher, Zhuowen was shocked. He hurried to Bai Fang's side, but just as he was about to approach him, he was stopped by Bai Fang. Zhuowen, watch my actions carefully. The slaughter of the war god is your teacher's masterpiece. You need to learn it well, Bai Fang said seriously. Zhuowen paused. He opened his mouth to say something, but in the end, he fell silent. He nodded and silently watched Bai Fang's actions. Bai Fang's methods were very complicated. He used these complicated methods to control the energy and explosions in the slaughter of the war god, constantly destroying the heavenly insect's colossal body. Under the attacks of the slaughter of the war god, the heavenly insect cursed and howled. However, as time went on, the heavenly insect's voice naturally became weaker and weaker. It even became lethargic. Zhuowen also discovered that the heavenly insect's colossal figure was constantly being cut up. In the end, the heavenly insect directly turned to dust before Zhuowen's gaze. How powerful! The heavenly insect has been completely destroyed just like that. Looking at the empty war god catalogue, Zhuowen's eyes also revealed a trace of shock. Due to the burial formation, Tiangu's strength had been greatly reduced, and it was extremely serious. However, the heavenly insect's vitality was extremely tenacious. Even Xiao Hei, the slaughter of the war god, struggled to do anything to it. However, the slaughter of the war god had completely destroyed it with ease. It was evident just how terrifying the slaughter of the war god was. Zhuowen, did you see clearly the technique I used just now? The Bai Fang slowly turned around. The profound intent of the slaughter of the war god revolved around him as he smiled at Zhuowen. Zhuowen's gaze froze. He could clearly sense the Bai Fang's presence constantly weakening. However, the Bai Fang smiled very gently as he looked at Zhuowen. Zhuowen's heart trembled when he saw the Bai Fang's smile. His nose twitched slightly as he nodded heavily. Teacher, I saw it clearly. I saw it all clearly. Ha ha. Good, Good. It's good that you saw it clearly. I know that with your talent, you will definitely surpass me in the future. The Baifang fell silent for a while before smiling. You will also set foot in the Central Plains in the future, so, go take a look at the Bai clan. Crack. As soon as the Baifang finished speaking, cracks began to appear on the surface of the immortal stone that held the former's body. The cracks continued to expand, but the Baifang's smile became even more radiant and gratified. He quietly looked at Zhuowen as if he wanted to engrave Zhuowen in his heart. Zhuowen, you're my first disciple, and at the same time, my last disciple. It's my fortune to be able to meet you in my final days. As he spoke, the Baifang glanced at the immortal stone that was constantly cracking. My time may be up. Although I still have many things to say to you, I'm afraid time won't allow it. Crack. Finally, the immortal stone completely shattered into nothingness, and the Baifang's figure began to fade and fade. Goodbye, my disciple. The Baifang's right hand gently rubbed Zhuowen's head. Then, it completely dissipated into countless specks of light. Zhuowen stared at the specks of light that dissipated in midair. He reached out with his right hand and slowly clenched it. However, he realized that he could not grasp the specks of light in his hand. Master, kneeling on one knee in midair, Zhuowen muttered softly. His eyes were filled with sorrow. Master, Yarrow Dai, who was in the demon god array, stepped forward and came to Zhuowen's side. She looked at the Baifang that had already turned into countless specks of light. 2 streams of clear tears flowed from her beautiful eyes. Her voice was filled with sorrow. Sigh. Zhuowen, even if the Baifang does not use the war god catalogue, he will not be able to survive for long with his remaining strand of divine consciousness. You don't have to be too sad. Xiao Hei's dragon body transformed into Xiao Hei's dog form. At this moment, he looked at Zhuowen, who was kneeling on one knee in midair, and consoled him with a heavy heart. However, Zhuowen did not seem to hear him. He continued to kneel in midair, as if he had been petrified. He did not move at all. Looking at Zhuowen's appearance, Xiao Hei knew that the dissipation of the Baifang was a huge blow to him. However, he also knew that Zhuowen needed a quiet environment at this moment. Therefore, he very consciously waved his right paw and imprisoned Mu Feng. He threw him to the side and did not let Mu Feng disturb Zhuowen. Master. Wu Dai also came to a place not far behind Zhuowen. She wanted to approach Zhuowen but was stopped by Xiao Hei. Little girl, your master needs to be alone right now. Don't disturb him. Xiao Hei said in an indifferent tone. Hearing this, Wu Dai pouted. However, she could also feel the sorrowful aura coming from Zhuowen. In the end, under Xiao Hei's persuasion, she reluctantly looked at Zhuowen's back and stood where she was. Time passed day by day. Zhuowen continued to kneel in mid-air, motionless. This went on for close to 15 days. Boom. On the morning of the 15th day, when a ray of sunlight shone down, a vast aura burst out from Zhuowen's body. The surrounding Yuan Qi started to boil, forming countless Yuan Qi cyclones that surrounded Zhuowen. Deng deng deng. Xiao Hei, Wu Dai, and Yarrow Dai, who were guarding Zhuowen, retreated under this aura. Their eyes were filled with shock. What a powerful aura. Zhuowen has broken through to the 2nd level of the Emperor realm. Yarrow Dai muttered in a low voice. She also discovered that Zhuo Wen, who had broken through to the 2nd level of the Great Emperor realm, was much stronger than ordinary Great Emperor realm cultivators. As for Xiao Hei and Wu Dai, after their initial shock, their faces were filled with joy. Under the influence of countless Yuan Qi cyclones, Zhuowen slowly stood up. His gaze was extremely calm, and an extraordinary aura was born spontaneously. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. After Zhuowen's breakthrough, Xiao Hei, Wu Dai, and Yarrow Dai immediately rushed to his side, looking at Zhuowen in surprise. Chapter 1297. 8th Azure Dragon Envoy Master, are you alright? Wu Dai came to Zhuowen's side. Wrapping her jade-like hands around his shoulders, she asked in an extremely concerned manner. Xiao Hei and Yarrow Dai naturally stared at Zhuowen, their eyes brimming with concern. With a faint smile, Zhuowen replied, I'm fine. As he spoke, his gaze looked towards the horizon as he spoke in an indifferent tone, there will be a day when I head towards the Central Plains. Xiao Hei nodded her head. Naturally, she knew the main reason why Zhuowen had entered the Central Plains. In fact, it was mainly for the Bai Fang's Bai family. Bang! All of a sudden, a muffled thunder-like sound rang out. In the next instant, extremely terrifying black qi erupted from Mu Feng's body. In the next instant, the black qi broke through the shackles on the surface of his body. Like a gust of wind, Mu Feng furiously fled into the distance. Oh! It's that fellow Mu Feng. How did he break through this Dragon Lord's shackles? Xiao Hei's furious voice rang out, attracting the attention of Zhuowen and the rest. Where do you think you're going? Zhuowen's gaze was eerily cold. Taking a step forward, he shot out explosively, appearing to shrink the ground to an inch. In an instant, he had caught up to the fleeing Mu Feng. 4 kills array. In the instant he caught up to Mu Feng, the 4 kills array smashed down once again. Frightening killing power surged out, completely sealing off Mu Feng's surroundings. Bang! Mu Feng did not say anything, as his right hand formed into a palm and fiercely rumbled out. Immediately, Zhuowen frowned as he discovered that Mu Feng's palm actually contained a frightening black aura. This black aura was truly very similar to the heavenly insects. Rumble. Mu Feng's palm shot out. In the next instant, the killing power of the 4 kills array collapsed. Without stopping, Mu Feng continued to flee. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly. With a wave of his sleeve, he withdrew the 4 kills array. At this moment, the strength displayed by Mu Feng was much stronger than before. Furthermore, he had discovered that Mu Feng's method of attack was completely different. Instead of using mental energy, he used a black qi similar to the heavenly worm. It won't be that easy to escape. Zhuowen snorted coldly. He was much stronger now that he had broken through to the 2nd level of the Great Emperor realm. He waved his right hand and the dragon seal in his palm started to emit a black energy. The roar of a dragon resonated in the air. Heavenly Dragon Lock Seal. Zhuowen coldly spat out these words. Clang. Countless chains shot out explosively amidst the loud and clear dragon roars. Densely packed, they completely sealed off the area within a 50-kilometer radius around Mu Feng. A powerful sealing force radiated out, causing the space within a 100-kilometer radius to collapse and collapse, as the entire space was sealed within. If one were to take a closer look, one would see that the chains were surrounded by countless black dragon silhouettes. These silhouettes danced and fluttered about in a rather spectacular and intense manner. Boom! 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 Trapped within the space of the heavenly dragon lock seal, Mu Feng's advancing momentum came to a halt. Sending a ferocious punch smashing against the chains in front of him, intense clanging sounds rang out. In the next instant, he was sent flying back by the rebounding force, while his expression turned exceedingly dark. The might of the heavenly dragon lock seal was even more terrifying than the 4 kills array. Naturally, it wouldn't be that easy for Mu Feng to break through it. You're a heavenly worm. Zhuowen quietly hovered outside of the chains as he stared at Mu Feng, whose eyes had turned jet black. Narrowing his eyes, he spoke out in astonishment. Mu Feng stared coldly at Zhuowen, before replying in a deep voice, I'm Mu Feng, and also a heavenly worm. Zhuowen, I'm one of the 10 great azure dragon envoys of the Blue Dragon Hall. Do you dare to kill me? If you kill me, the Azure Dragon main hall won't let you off. What a joke. Looks like you've been possessed by a heavenly worm. Aren't you afraid that the heavenly worm will devour you? Furthermore, I possess a dragon soul, and am a descendant of the Riker. Even if I don't look for the Azure Dragon main hall, the Azure Dragon main hall will come and find trouble with me. Why should I care about the Azure Dragon main hall? Replied Zhuowen in an indifferent tone. Hearing those words, Mu Feng's face turned dark and gloomy. Looks like you really don't plan on letting me leave. You'll regret it. As he spoke, Mu Feng flipped his right hand. At some unknown point in time, a jade talisman had appeared in his palm. Spatial energy radiated from the jade talisman. Passing through the heavenly dragon lock seal, the spatial energy rushed straight towards the horizon. In the next instant, a crack appeared in the void, before an illusory figure slowly descended. This illusory figure appeared to be a middle-aged man in his 30s. His jawbone was high, and his face had a faint golden hue to it. His gaze was as sharp as a venomous snake's. His gaze first landed on Zhuo Wen, before shifting away and landing on Mu Feng. 10th Azure Dragon Envoy, why are you in such a state? Don't tell me this was done by this brat. This middle-aged man naturally frowned upon seeing Mu Feng's miserable appearance, as he spoke out in a somewhat displeased manner. The aura from Zhuowen's body was only at the second level of the Heavenly Emperor realm. Therefore, he naturally did not believe that Zhuowen was the one who had caused Mu Feng to end up in such a state. 8th Azure Dragon Envoy, help me escape. This brat is not simple. He's a descendant of the Riker, and possesses the Great Abyss Saint Dragon. One's strength cannot be judged by its appearance. At this moment, the pitch-black color in Mu Feng's eyes had already faded, and had turned clear and bright as he spoke to the middle-aged man who had just appeared. Oh! He's actually a descendant of the Riker? Furthermore, he possesses the Great Abyss Saint Dragon? The 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's gaze landed on Zhuowen. The corners of his mouth curled up into a cruel smile as he continued, in other words, if we capture this brat and bring him back to the Azure Dragon main hall, wouldn't we be rewarded handsomely? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly. The aura from this middle-aged man in front of him was terrifying, even more so than Mu Feng's. Mu Feng was an arcane heavenly master, and his various techniques were actually comparable to a 7th-level heavenly emperor. However, this middle-aged man in front of him was much stronger than Mu Feng. It was very likely that he was an 8th-level heavenly emperor. Right now, although Zhuowen had broken through to the 2nd level of the heavenly emperor realm, it would be very difficult for him to fight against an 8th-level heavenly emperor. Release Feng Mu, and at the same time, bind your own arms and follow me back to the Azure Dragon main hall. I will let you off and not cripple you. The 8th Azure Dragon Envoy grinned and said cruelly. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, what qualifications do you have to ask me to bind my own arms and follow you back to the Azure Dragon main hall? Let me ask you, who do you think you are? Do you think that just because you put on a high and mighty attitude, you are the Heavenly Emperor? In fact, in my opinion, your actions are really laughable and childish. The 8th Green Dragon Envoy's expression was a little sluggish. His eyes immediately darkened as he said, you are really bold. You actually dare to speak to me in such a manner. In that case, I can only cripple you before bringing you back to the Green Dragon headquarters. After saying that, the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy took a step forward, and the might of an 8th-level Heavenly Emperor erupted. A terrifying Yuan Qi storm swept out from his body, and his clothes and hair fluttered wildly. He looked like a demon god that had descended to the mortal world. Tyrant Fist of the Heavens. The 8th Azure Dragon Emissary threw out a punch. Terrifying origin energy condensed into a huge fist shadow that was a few hundred feet tall. It was like a huge mountain that came crashing down. The fist shadow was filled with terrifying pressure, as if the entire sky could be smashed down with a single punch. Zhuowen's eyes were extremely solemn. Facing an 8th-level Heavenly Emperor's attack, he had no choice but to use his full strength. Therefore, he directly took out the 4 slaughter formation and blocked in front of him. Rumble. The Tyrant Fist of the Heavens came crashing down on the 4 slaughter formation, and an extremely loud explosion resounded. Zhuowen frowned slightly. The 4 slaughter formation was actually pushed back by such a powerful force, and so was he. Break it. The 8th Azure Dragon Envoy roared, and punched out again and again. Every punch was wrapped in a heavenly fist aura, and it crushed down on Zhuowen. His face was slightly pale. Crack. Finally, under the 10th punch, the 4 slaughter formation was broken. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood, and his eyes were extremely gloomy. Haha. I've already said that you're no match for me. If you'd listened to me obediently and followed me back to the Azure Dragon headquarters, you wouldn't have suffered so much. But now, it's already too late. I'll break every bone in your body and let you taste the feeling of living a life worse than death. The 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's eyes were filled with savagery. He laughed and took a step forward. His imposing aura was like a rainbow as he punched towards Zhuowen, intending to destroy him completely. Oh no, Zhuowen, be careful. When Xiao He, Wu Dai and Yaro Dai saw this scene, they could not help but exclaim. Yarrow Dai and Wu Dai immediately entered the core of the demon god formation and activated the huge demon god to help. However, it was too late. The 8th Azure Dragon Envoy had already arrived in front of Zhuowen, and his fist was heavily aimed at Zhuowen's chest. Zhuowen quietly stared at the fist that was getting closer and closer. There was no fear in his eyes. When the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's fist was completely in front of him, Zhuowen flicked his finger and took out a long sword that was full of cracks. You took out such a broken long sword in front of my attack. You are indeed courting death. Looking at the Emperor Wu Tian's sword that was floating in front of Zhuowen, the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy laughed and threw out a punch without a care. However, when his fist landed on the Emperor Wu Tian's sword, his face suddenly froze. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. This was because he found that the broken Emperor Wu Tian's sword suddenly burst out with a pressure that made even him tremble. Poochie. The Emperor Wu Tian's sword buzzed and directly slashed the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's fist. Wu Dai and Yarrow Dai were shocked to find that the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's tyrant fist of the firmament was directly broken. Even his right hand was directly turned into a cloud of blood mist. Ah! The 8th Azure Dragon Envoy screamed and retreated dozens of steps. He held his broken right arm and stared at the Emperor Wu Tian's sword in front of Zhuowen. He exclaimed, "A saint weapon? You actually have a saint weapon?" Zhuowen did not say anything. He pointed his right hand and immediately, the Emperor Wu Tian's sword whistled and flew towards the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy again. The latter naturally retreated in horror. However, the Emperor Wu Tian's sword was after all a profound saint weapon and contained a powerful saint aura. It was not something that an 8th-level martial emperor like the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy could resist. No. After dodging more than 10 moves, Emperor Wu Tian's sword suddenly accelerated and stabbed into the neck of the 8th Azure Dragon emissary at a tricky angle. Then, there was a burst of bright blood. The 8th Azure Dragon emissary's head was directly cut off. Chapter 1298. Absorbing the 9 heavens purple profound lightning swoosh. The instant the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's head was chopped off, a ray of light shot out from the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's body. It let out a sharp whistle as it flew into the distance. Yuanying. Zhuowen sneered. Under his will, the heavenless sword suddenly shot out. Sword chi swept out everywhere it passed, forming a violent hurricane. Swoosh. The heavenless sword was extremely fast. In an instant, it caught up with the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's yuanying. Sword light flashed and pierced through the yuanying. The 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's yuanying let out a miserable shriek. It was extremely dim and powerless. With the power of the heavenless sword, it was naturally able to directly destroy the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's yuanying. However, Zhuowen could not bear to destroy it. After all, the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's position in the Blue Dragon Hall was not low. He definitely knew the structure and situation of the Azure Dragon main hall. With a step, Zhuowen arrived beside the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy. With a stroke of his right hand, the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's yuanying was held in his palm. The 8th Azure Dragon Envoy trembled as he knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. "Sir, please let me go. I have no intention of going against you. It's all because of that bastard Mu Feng. He actually used the spatial jade talisman to summon me here. Please spare me." The 8th Azure Dragon Envoy was extremely sensible. He actually put down his dignity as an 8th Heaven Emperor and knelt on the ground to beg Zhuowen for mercy. This caused Zhuowen to be rather surprised. Zhuowen completely ignored the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy's begging. With a wave of his right hand, he directly kept the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy into his spiritual ring. A pair of cold eyes landed on Mu Feng, who was trapped in the heavenly dragon sealing seal. He grinned and said, "It's your turn." Seeing the radiant smile on Zhuowen's face, Mu Feng's entire body trembled, while a feeling of dread rose up in his heart. His gaze was firmly fixed on the Emperor Wu Tian's sword, as he said in a trembling voice, "It's actually the Emperor Wu Tian's sword." Back then, the Emperor Wu Tian's sword had clearly been shattered by my lord. How can it still be used now? Zhuowen did not reply, but his heart ached. The Emperor's sword was indeed severely damaged. Xiao He had said before that this sword could only be used 2 more times. Now that the first time had been used, there was only 1 more time left. You talk too much. Just die. Zhuowen gave a cold snort as he took a step forward, directly entering the heavenly dragon lock seal. The heavenless sword in his hand shot out, causing countless sword chi to sweep out. Like a shooting star, it streaked across the void, shooting straight towards Mu Feng, who was within the heavenly dragon lock seal. Damn it! Fear appeared in Mu Feng's eyes, and his eyes turned pitch black once again. Black chi rolled out from his body, and his aura instantly became much more powerful and terrifying. Mu Feng extended his right hand, as the rolling black chi condensed into 12 gigantic palms. Shooting out, they smashed against the Emperor Wu Tian sword. Bang! The Emperor Wu Tian sword was extremely terrifying. With a slash of it, the 12 palms condensed from black chi were completely shattered into nothingness. No. After slicing apart the 12 palms, the Emperor Wu Tian sword's aura was like a rainbow as it streaked across the void, continuing to shoot towards Mu Feng. As the terrifying sword chi radiated out, it caused Mu Feng's hair to flutter about. An aura of death rose within Mu Feng's heart, causing him to feel fear and trepidation. Block it. Although the might of the Emperor Wu Tian sword was terrifying, it was naturally impossible for Mu Feng to sit and wait for death. Pushing his hands out, he borrowed the strength of the heavenly insects to form a tough and durable black barrier in front of him. Crack. However, the black barrier was completely useless in the face of the Emperor Wu Tian sword. Upon contact, it instantly shattered apart, while the Emperor Wu Tian sword pierced right through Mu Feng's body. At the same time, the Emperor Wu Tian sword bent in the air, sending out 2 rays of sword light that cut off all 4 of Mu Feng's limbs. A miserable shriek rang out as Mu Feng screamed out hysterically. Due to the pain and suffering, his face had turned somewhat malevolent, while a sliver of despair gushed out from his eyes. Mu Feng, you've exhausted all of your schemes, and schemed against everyone that had entered the Emperor's tomb, causing the deaths of countless innocent cultivators. Furthermore, for the sake of obtaining the inheritance of the Emperor's tomb's master, you've actually colluded with the heavenly insects, such evil creatures. In the end, you've ended up in such a state. This should be considered as karma, right? Zhuowen moved in front of Mu Feng. With a wave of his right hand, he grabbed Mu Feng. His gaze was exceedingly calm as he stared indifferently at Mu Feng. The latter's heart trembled as he said in a deep voice, however, I'm still 1 step behind. I'm very regretful. Back then, when you were completing the river diagram, I had already captured you and forcefully seized the river diagram array from your body. If so, I wouldn't have ended up in such a state. From the moment you colluded with the heavenly insects, your fate has already been decided. I just want to ask you, do you know about the dangers and origins of the heavenly insects? Zhuowen said with narrowed eyes. However, Mu Feng smiled and said, naturally, I know about them. However, so what? As long as I can obtain great power, even if everyone else dies, what does that have to do with me? Zhuowen, you've killed the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy. Now, I'm going to die at your hands. You've killed 2 great Azure Dragon Envoys from the Azure Dragon main hall. You won't be able to escape. You'll be hunted down by the Azure Dragon main hall. At that time, your fate will be even more miserable than mine. Mu Feng laughed heartily. In the next instant, his right hand suddenly pointed at the spot between his eyebrows. Instantly, his aura began to slowly disappear. In the end, his aura was completely destroyed. You're destroying your own spiritual sea. Looking at the completely lifeless Mu Feng, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly. Pressing his right hand on the former's forehead, he discovered that the spiritual sea between Mu Feng's eyebrows had actually been completely destroyed. Very clearly, Mu Feng knew that he was already unable to escape from Zhuowen's grasp. Therefore, he decided to just destroy himself. After all, the spiritual sea was an extremely important thing for an arcana master. Once it was destroyed, it was equivalent to having one's soul scattered. There was no chance of survival. You're really decisive. After taking a deep look at Mu Feng in his hand, Zhuowen released his right hand and tossed Mu Feng's corpse into the sea of bitterness. After causing a series of ripples, Mu Feng's corpse sank into the depths. Zhuowen. This Mu Feng is the 10th Azure Dragon Envoy of the Azure Dragon main hall. Furthermore, the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy was also killed by you. I'm afraid that we won't be able to hide this matter from the Azure Dragon main hall for long. Brat, you better be careful. Xiao He came to Zhuowen's side, speaking in a somewhat solemn manner. Zhuowen nodded his head. The Blue Dragon Hall was known as the Overlord of the Eastern Lands. Therefore, its foundation was definitely extremely rich. An existence like that was truly something that Zhuowen could not afford to offend. However, Zhuowen was not afraid. The Blue Dragon Hall and Rika were mortal enemies. Once Zhuowen developed Rika, he would have to face the Blue Dragon Hall. In fact, he was even prepared to let Rika replace the Blue Dragon Hall and become the new overlord of the Eastern Lands. I'm aware of this matter. Zhuowen nodded his head. Shortly after, his gaze landed on the 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning before him as he said, Xiao He, the 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning's rampage has yet to end. I wonder if my Lei Sanyi can absorb the power of the 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning? Lei Sanyi is a mystical pair of wings derived from the wind and lightning sacred symbol. It possesses unparalleled speed. The 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning is also a lightning energy. You can go in and give it a try. However, the 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning is extremely powerful. If you feel that you can't withstand it, it's best for you to retreat. Don't act recklessly. Xiao He warned with a solemn gaze, causing Zhuowen to vigorously nod his head. After which, he took a step forward, 3 pairs of lightning wings unfurling behind his back. Just like that, he entered the 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning that was still rampaging. Is that fellow crazy? He actually intends to enter the rampaging 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning. On the nearby islands, many cultivators naturally noticed Zhuowen's crazy actions. They had just recovered from the shock of Zhuowen killing the 8th Azure Dragon Envoy and Mu Feng. Now, they were once again stunned by Zhuowen's shocking actions. Originally, the 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning's power was extremely terrifying. If Emperor Realm cultivators were struck by it, they would die. Now, coincidentally, the 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning's rampage was many times stronger than before. Most likely, even a high-level Emperor Realm cultivator would be doomed if they entered the depths of the clouds. Therefore, when Zhuowen flew towards the gathering place of the 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning, many cultivators were stunned. Rumble. When Zhuowen neared the periphery of the clouds, purple lightning as thick as a water bucket swept out from the clouds and directly struck down, blasting towards Zhuowen's head. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. Just as he was about to dodge, countless dragon, serpent, and serpent shadows rushed out from the 3 pairs of lightning wings on his back. The serpent, and dragon creatures intertwined together, forming an extremely terrifying thunderbolt. It violently collided with the purple thunderbolt. Immediately, purple and blue plasma spilled out in all directions, as if there were countless threads of electricity surging. What surprised Zhuowen was that the lightning formed by the snake, flood dragon, and dragon was actually slowly nibbling away at the energy of the 9 Heavens Purple Profound Lightning. After about 10 breaths, the purple lightning that swept out from the clouds was directly swallowed by Lei Sanyi. Zhuowen's sharp senses discovered that the blue lightning on the surface of Lei Sanyi's body was actually faintly tinged with a trace of purple. It looked rather gorgeous and colorful, and even Lei Sanyi's aura had become much more vast. As expected of the wings derived from the wind and lightning saint symbol. It actually has the ability to devour lightning. Feeling this characteristic of Lei Sanyi, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with surprise. With a wild roar, he directly rushed into the depths of the clouds. In the rolling black clouds, thousands of purple lightning gathered, transforming into a huge purple lightning dragon that swept straight towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen was not afraid. He unfolded the lightning wings to the extreme. Suddenly, countless lightning snakes, flood dragons, and lightning dragons appeared around his body, blocking the terrifying purple lightning dragon. If one looked carefully, the purple lightning dragon began to be slowly nibbled away by the lightning snakes, flood dragons, and lightning dragons, merging into a part of their bodies. This scene immediately stunned and dumbfounded countless Bitter Island cultivators. In front of the berserk nine heavens purple profound lightning, Zhuo Wen was like a fish in water. Not only was he not devoured by the berserk nine heavens purple profound lightning, the purple lightning was devoured by him. To be more precise, it was devoured by the 3 pairs of lightning wings on his body. Awesome. Chapter 1299. Lightning Wings Mutation 3 Days and 3 Nights. The 9 heavens purple profound lightning continued for 3 days and 3 nights. Zhuowen had also sat within the 9 heavens purple profound lightning for 3 days and 3 nights. In the air, the lightning wings on Zhuowen's back, which were originally 30 feet wide, had now grown to 100 feet wide. Furthermore, if one were to look closely, the 3 pairs of lightning wings, which were originally separated, were faintly showing signs of fusing together. Ow! Countless roars resounded around the lightning wings. This was because there were countless dragon, serpent, and serpent silhouettes lingering around the lightning wings. The roars were accompanied by the rumbling of thunder, which was extremely ear-piercing. Boom! Zhuo Wen slowly opened his eyes. Purple lightning flashed in his eyes. Then, the 3 pairs of lightning wings on his back suddenly exploded with purple lightning. Then, the 3 pairs of lightning wings merged into a huge pair of lightning wings. With just a flap of the lightning wings, purple lightning descended around him. It was the 9 heavens purple profound lightning. I never imagined that after absorbing the 9 heavens purple profound lightning, the lightning serpent wings, lightning flood dragon wings and lightning dragon wings would actually fuse into a 10-foot lightning wing. His gaze fell on the extremely huge lightning wings on his back. A smile appeared on the corner of Zhuowen's mouth. He could feel that after absorbing the 9 heavens purple profound lightning, the lightning wings were much stronger than before. Furthermore, their speed, with a thought, Zhuowen flapped the purple lightning wings. Countless purple lightning dissipated. Soon after, Zhuowen disappeared from the spot as though he had teleported. The instant he appeared, he was already 1,000 miles away. So fast. This was not only what Zhuowen thought. In the distance, Xiao He, Yarrow Dai and Wu Dai were also thinking. Even the cultivators near Misery Sea looked as though they had seen a ghost when they saw the figure that had teleported 1,000 miles away. They did not even see Zhuowen's figure clearly. The latter was already 1,000 miles away. That speed was simply too terrifying. Rumble. 1,000 miles away, the purple lightning flapped once again. Soon after, Zhuowen appeared before Xiao He, Yarrow Dai and Wu Dai. Looks like after absorbing the 9 heavens purple profound bomb, your Lei Sanyi has undergone quite a transformation. Xiao He looked at Zhuowen with a hint of surprise in her eyes, but more than that, she was gratified. Yarrow Dai and Wu Dai, on the other hand, were overjoyed. Haha. I think I can smell the nascent soul aura of a high-level great emperor. Suddenly, a rather savage voice shot out from Zhuowen's body. Shortly after, a damaged jade cauldron shot out from Zhuowen's forehead. A fox-like creature emerged from the jade cauldron. It was the Fushi cauldron's Cheng Huang. Your nose is really sharper than a dog's. Xiao He curled his lips as he looked at Cheng Huang and snorted in displeasure. Yes, yes. Little Long Long, my nose is indeed more sensitive than yours. Cheng Huang did not seem to hear the sarcasm in Xiao He's words. Instead, it retorted. Xiao He was like a kitten whose tail had been stepped on. She jumped up and glared at Cheng Huang with hostility. Woof woof, this dragon lord will bite you to death. Thus, a little black dog and a yellow fox began to bite each other. Between the dog's barking and the fox's barking, there were also sounds of cursing that rang out in the air. Zhuowen held his forehead as he watched Xiao He and Cheng Huang bite each other. These two fellows seemed to be destined to fight each other. Zhuowen felt extremely helpless. By the side, Wu Dai and Yarrow Dai exchanged glances with each other as a strange expression appeared in their eyes. They did not expect that Zhuowen was hiding these two strange fellows. Although Xiao He and Cheng Huang's actions were strange, their auras were extraordinary. Therefore, Yarrow Dai and Wu Dai naturally did not interfere. Enough is enough, you two. With a dark expression, Zhuo Wen took a step forward and threw the Fushi cauldron between Xiao He and Cheng Huang. Sure enough, when they saw the Fushi cauldron, the two fellows who were still fighting decisively stopped. After all, the Fushi cauldron had a special meaning to them. They did not dare do anything to it. Little guy, you have the nascent soul of a high-level great emperor, don't you? Hee hee. Cheng Huang tidied its slightly messy fur and turned to look at Zhuowen as if nothing had happened. It rubbed its furry paws together like a miser and chuckled. Zhuowen was a little surprised by Cheng Huang's behavior, but Xiao He was the first to speak. This guy probably needs the nascent soul of a high-level great emperor to repair the Fushi cauldron. What do you know? High-level great emperors are useless for repairing the Fushi cauldron. Cheng Huang glared fiercely at Xiao He. Xiao He didn't understand. Then what do you want to do with it? High-level great emperors' nascent souls are the main ingredient of a superior immortal pill, the immortal essence pill. The immortal essence pill is extremely precious to great emperors. It can forcibly raise a cultivator below high-level great emperor by a minor level without any side effects, Cheng Huang explained calmly. It can forcibly raise a great emperor's cultivation by a whole level? Is the immortal essence pill that useful? Zhuowen asked in surprise. Xiao He retorted coldly, forget it. You haven't even repaired the Fushi cauldron yet. Are you trying to make an immortal essence pill? Are you kidding me? Cough cough. Repairing the Fushi cauldron isn't easy. Just wait and see. It won't be long before I'll be able to repair it. When that time comes, the Fushi cauldron will be able to refine pills. Cheng Huang coughed dryly. However, before you refine the pill, Zhuowen, you should leave the advanced great emperor's nascent soul with me for safekeeping. Zhuowen was quite eager for the immortal essence pill, but he shook his head. That nascent soul is the 8th Azure Dragon envoy of the Blue Dragon Hall. I have some things to ask that guy, so I can't give them to you yet. Is that so? That's fine. After you ask him, just toss that guy's nascent soul into the Fushi cauldron. With that, Cheng Huang re-entered the Fushi cauldron and disappeared into Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. Let's leave this place for now and head for Excellent Spirit Island, Zhuowen said to Yarrow Dai and Wu Dai. All right. Yarrow Dai and Wu Dai had no objections. After returning to Excellent Spirit Island, Zhuowen discovered that all the cultivators on the island were looking at him with reverence. It was as if he was a majestic statue. However, Zhuowen didn't mind too much. He knew that everyone's attitude towards him was mainly due to the strength he had displayed. In this world where the strong were respected, strength would naturally earn the respect of others. Master, should we enter the 9 Netherworld realm? I really want to go in and see what it's like, Wu Dai, who was standing beside Zhuowen, suddenly said. Zhuowen glanced at Yarrow Dai, who was standing behind Wu Dai. Yarrow Dai smiled bitterly and nodded. Clearly, she also agreed to let Wu Dai follow Zhuowen. All right, I'll bring you with me when the time comes. However, I still need to make a trip to the Azure Shen Empire. You don't need to come with me. When I return, I'll bring you to the 9 Netherworld realm, Zhuowen said softly to Wu Dai. Master, why are you going to the Azure Shen Empire again? I remember you went there last time, right? Wu Dai asked curiously. Zhuowen chuckled, I still have some matters to attend to. Wait for me here. Zhuowen naturally couldn't tell her about the Saint Rune laws. After all, it involved too much. Without waiting for Wu Dai's reply, a pair of purple lightning wings spread out behind Zhuowen's back. Following that, ear-piercing thunder rumbled and Zhuowen disappeared from the spot. Master! Really? Watching Zhuowen disappear before her eyes, Wu Dai curled her lips and stomped her foot. She felt somewhat helpless in her heart. In the sea of misery where the Emperor's tomb was located, a corpse floated to the surface of an inconspicuous reef. The corpse, which was originally drifting with the current, immediately stopped. If one were to look carefully, the corpse's 4 limbs were completely broken. Its entire body was swollen and looked quite miserable. CI. When the corpse slammed into the reef, its originally tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. It was a pair of incomparably dark eyes, as if there was an endless abyss in them. Strands of black qi started to linger around the corpse's broken limbs. Under the effect of the black qi, the severed limbs of the corpse started to slowly regrow. When the limbs were completely regrown, the person took a step into the embittered sea and leapt to the top of the reef. Zhuowen, you've ruined this king's plan to break the seal. You deserve to die. The eyes of this figure flickered as he cursed in an extremely vicious manner. Soon after, he once again spoke in a low voice. Fortunately, this seat had left a strand of my will within Mu Feng's body. Although that Zhuowen had forced Mu Feng to self-destruct his sea of consciousness, it just so happened to give this strand of my will the opportunity to successfully seize Mu Feng's body. However, this king's will and strength are truly too weak. Looks like I need to sneak into the Azure Dragon main hall and wait for an opportunity to slowly recover. I'll settle the score with that Zhuowen sooner or later. The figure slowly raised his head, revealing an exceedingly grim expression. If Zhuowen was here, he would definitely be able to recognize this figure as Mu Feng, who had committed suicide. Naturally, the real Mu Feng had already died. At this moment, the strand of the heavenly worm's will that existed in this body. Furthermore, it was an extremely weak strand of his will. Descendant of the Riker, and killing the 8th Azure Dragon envoy. If I return to the Azure Dragon main hall with the identity of Mu Feng and inform the Blue Dragon Hall about these two things, I'm afraid that it would be a great merit. Next, I just need to hibernate in the Blue Dragon Hall and recover. Mu Feng's low and deep voice slowly rang out. In the next moment, he stomped his foot on the reef. The powerful force behind his stomp caused the reef to shatter apart, while he shot out explosively like an arrow that had been released from a bow. Zhuowen naturally did not know that Mu Feng had been taken over by the heavenly worm's will, and had come back to life. If he knew about it, he might have completely destroyed Mu Feng's corpse back then. Chapter 1300. Black Dragon Empire. After entering the Imperial City, Zhuowen realized that the Imperial City was much more prosperous than before. There were even more cultivators here. Moreover, the city walls of the Imperial City were much thicker and taller than before. They must have been specially repaired after the previous battle. Walking on the huge street, Zhuowen was surprised to find that the name of the Qing Xian Empire had been changed to the Black Dragon Empire from the conversations of the people around him. The new emperor of the Black Dragon Empire was called Emperor Bai. Zhuowen knew that Emperor Bai was probably Bai Mai. Looks like Bai Mai is interested. Hearing that the Qing Xian Empire had been renamed to the Black Dragon Empire, Zhuowen's lips curled into a smile. Moreover, from the discussions of the cultivators around him, it seemed that they had a good impression of Emperor Bai and respected him. It seemed that after a few months, Bai Mai had managed to keep the imperial capital in good order. Walking slowly towards the imperial city's dungeon, Zhuowen was not in a hurry to summon Bai Mai. Instead, he strolled around the imperial city, quietly looking at the people and things around him. He sighed in his heart. The imperial city was a place that left a deep impression on him. This place carried many of his memories. Previously, because of the battle with Emperor Qing, he did not have the time to take a good look at this place. Now that he had settled everything, he naturally wanted to take a good look at the imperial city. However, the more he looked, the more he felt that things had changed. The imperial city had changed too quickly. Get out of the way, all of you get out of the way. Don't block my view. Otherwise, all of you will be caught and beheaded. Suddenly, a delicate cry was heard from the front of the street. Soon after, Zhuowen was surprised to discover that the originally densely packed crowd in front of him had consciously parted. Moreover, he could sense that the faces of those who had parted were filled with intense fear. It's actually the daughter of the country-guarding Marquis, Miss Qin Xuanmei. The country-guarding Marquis is a big shot recently promoted by Emperor Bai. His position in the imperial city is extremely high, only below Emperor Bai. He is a very popular person now. We can't afford to offend the daughter of such a person. Otherwise, we might really be caught and beheaded. That would be too unjust. Let's get out of the way. Don't block the way. Suddenly, there was a burst of whispers in the surroundings. Zhuowen also looked in front of him in surprise. He had never heard of this country-guarding Marquis before. However, from the discussions around him, he knew that the country guarding Marquis should have been promoted recently. He should be by Mai's confidant. In front of them, a woman in a light red dress was riding a huge griffin and rushing towards them. This woman had a graceful figure. Her waist was like a water snake, and there was a belt with red stripes. If one looked closely, the belt was actually a small snake that was constantly spitting out its tongue. At this moment, the woman was skillfully driving the griffin as she chased after a black shadow in front of her. The black shadow was extremely fast. Even though the woman in red was riding the griffin, she was unable to catch up to it in a short while. Zhuoan narrowed his eyes and saw that the black shadow that was escaping in front of him was actually a python that was about a meter long. This python was quite strange. It actually had 3 heads. 3-headed flaming spirit snake? No, it's a little different from the 3-headed flaming spirit snake. Zhuoan narrowed his eyes. He realized that this python was similar to the 3-headed flaming spirit snake that he had encountered in the dragon vein. However, the 3-headed flaming spirit snake was fiery red all over. Although this python also had 3 heads, its surface was dark gold. Moreover, the aura of this 3-headed flaming spirit snake was far more powerful than the 3-headed flaming spirit snake. However, Zhuoan realized that this 3-headed flaming spirit snake was not large in size. It was probably still in its infancy and was not very powerful. It was probably around the level of an ultimate emperor. Although the woman in red's aura was weaker than this 3-headed flaming spirit snake and was only around the level of an ultimate emperor, there were 2 figures following behind her. These 2 figures' auras were much more powerful. They were actually ultimate emperors. It was because of the 2 figures behind the woman that the 3-headed flaming spirit snake was escaping in such a sorry state. Let's see where you can run to. The distance between the griffin and the 3-headed flaming spirit snake was getting closer and closer. Finally, the woman swung her right hand and pulled out the small snake at her waist. She used it as a whip and flung it out. The small snake was not ordinary. The moment the woman flung it out, the snake's body immediately swelled to several feet long. Extremely blazing flames appeared on its skin. In an instant, a sea of fire appeared and blocked the 3-headed flaming spirit snake's path. Hiss hiss hiss. The little snake hissed a few times as its path was blocked. However, its reaction speed was extremely fast. With a swing of its tail, it changed its direction and rushed to the side. The direction it was rushing towards was exactly where Zhuoan was. Zhuoan raised his eyebrows. He did not expect the 3-headed flaming spirit snake to choose him. Could it be that he had concealed his aura and was like an ordinary cultivator, so it chose him to be a pushover? Thinking of this, Zhuoan was a little amused. The 3-headed flaming spirit snake was only an ultimate 8-wheel emperor. This kind of strength was as insignificant as an ant in front of him. However, his gaze quickly turned cold. The griffin girl also reacted. With a wave of her hand, the flaming python in her hand was flung over. Terrifying flames burst out and directly enveloped Zhuoan and the 3-headed flaming spirit snake. The cultivators who were originally standing not far from Zhuoan scattered like birds and beasts. Their faces were filled with lingering fear. This guardian guarding Marquis' daughter, Qin Xuanmei, was indeed unruly. She did not even treat the cultivators as human beings. Although the 3-headed flaming spirit snake was heading towards Zhuoan, it was not to the extent of attacking him as well. That is a flaming python. The young man's aura was weak just now. Under such an attack, I'm afraid he will be finished. The surrounding cultivators, who had escaped a calamity, rejoiced as they turned their gazes back to the flames. Their eyes were filled with pity. They knew that the young man had suffered an unexpected calamity and was most likely going to meet a tragic end. Swoosh! A black shadow swept out from the flames and attracted everyone's attention. Immediately, they saw the 3-headed flaming spirit snake fleeing in panic. However, the 3-headed flaming spirit snake's aura was very weak at this moment. It was obvious that it had suffered serious injuries from the attack just now. Let's see where you can run to. Capture it for me. The girl raised her right hand and kept the flaming python in her hand. Then, she ordered the 2 figures behind her. Yes, miss. The two of them were middle-aged men in their 30s and 40s. They wore heavy black armor. The two of them took a step forward and blocked in front of the three-headed flaming spirit snake. The two of them blasted out a palm at the same time. Yuan power spurted out and set off violent energy ripples. Boom! Under such an attack, the three-headed flaming spirit snake wailed and fell from the sky to the ground. It struggled a few times on the ground but could not get up for a while. Miss. One of them unceremoniously pinched the three-headed flaming spirit snake in his palm. Yuan power spurted out and formed a transparent prison, causing the three-headed flaming spirit snake to be unable to move. After which, he handed it over to the girl. The corner of the girl's mouth revealed a pleased smile. She extended her jade-like hand and pinched the three-headed flaming spirit snake. She said, "Little fellow, you still want to escape? You should obediently become my pet." Hiss hiss hiss. The three-headed flaming spirit snake's body continued to twist and turn. The golden stripes on its body emitted a glow and its eyes were filled with fury. He, it is useless even if you are unwilling. You are destined to become my pet. As she spoke, the girl pinched the three-headed flaming spirit snake and said to the two middle-aged men beside her, "Since we have captured this little fellow, let's return home." Leave. Are you sure you want to leave just like that? Suddenly, an indifferent voice resounded, causing the body of the girl, who had originally turned around, to stiffen. Soon after, the red-clothed girl slowly turned around. When she saw the young man, who was quietly standing at the same spot, her beautiful eyes revealed a tinge of surprise. "You are actually not dead." The surrounding people also turned their attention to the young man. The expression in their eyes was no different from the girl's. The young man's aura was not strong, but he was actually unharmed under the girl's attack. This caused the surrounding people to take a few more glances at him. "Oh, you have hidden your cultivation. You are actually unharmed under the attack of my flaming spirit snake?" This time, the red-clothed girl finally sized up the young man in front of her. The surprise in her beautiful eyes quickly turned into a mocking expression. Zhuowen stared indifferently at the red-clothed girl. He pointed at her and said, "Now, kneel down and apologize to me. Otherwise, you will not have the chance later." When these words came out, the entire surrounding fell into silence. Everyone looked at Zhuowen with a strange gaze. They secretly muttered in their hearts, "Did water enter his brain?" He actually dared to ask the country-guarding Marquis' daughter to kneel down and apologize to her face. Even Qin Xuanmei revealed a startled expression. Soon after, her beautiful eyes slightly narrowed. Suddenly, she laughed softly and said, "You want me to kneel down and apologize?" Zhuowen did not waste any more words. His right hand stretched out in the air. Instantly, the red-clothed girl, who was originally sitting on the griffin, felt as if there was a huge mountain pressing down on her body. The griffin she was sitting on exploded into a cloud of blood mist, and Qin Xuanmei fell to the ground in the cloud of blood mist. Plop! Qin Xuanmei groaned in pain and knelt on the ground. Countless drops of blood dripped down from mid-air, dyeing her entire body blood-red. She looked like a delicate and beautiful rose. Presumptuous. The two middle-aged men, who were originally beside Qin Xuanmei, had a slight change in expression. They shouted loudly and violently rushed towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen slightly tilted his head. His cold demon-like pupils stared indifferently at the two middle-aged men. Then, he merely stretched out a palm. Yuan power spurted out and transformed into a huge invisible palm. Plop! Under the invisible palm, the two middle-aged men did not even have the chance to groan before they exploded into two clouds of blood mist. They were deader than dead. Hiss! The moment the two middle-aged men died, the surrounding crowd fell into silence. They stared unwaveringly at the young man, who was bathed in the rain of blood. Their eyes were filled with fear. Chapter 1301. Emperor Baizhuo had never been the one to stir up trouble. However, once something happened to provoke him, he would definitely resolve it with lightning speed. He would definitely not drag things out. Ah! Blood rained down as Qin Xuanmei knelt on the ground. She finally reacted and screamed. Her voice was extremely loud and piercing. The three-headed snake, which was originally imprisoned beside Qin Xuanmei, flashed its eyes. As the two middle-aged men were killed, the imprisonment on its body naturally collapsed. Hiss! The three-headed snake roared and bit directly at Qin Xuanmei's white neck. Qin Xuanmei, who was originally screaming, naturally did not notice the three-headed snake and was bitten directly. In an instant, Qin Xuanmei's screams weakened. Her face turned green and black. She fell to the ground and began to convulse. This snake is poisonous. Seeing Qin Xuanmei in such a state, many people around stepped back and stared at the three-headed snake with fear. Father, save me. Qin Xuanmei convulsed as she took out a jade-colored token and crushed it with trembling hands. At this moment, in the depths of the imperial city, in the vast throne room, a figure in a white robe sat quietly on a futon in the hall. His eyes were narrowed, and the aura in his body was like a storm on the sea. It was extremely powerful and terrifying. In front of this figure, a middle-aged man with a tall and straight posture and sharp eyes stood quietly on one side of the hall. He gazed respectfully at the figure on the futon. Xuanmei? Not good. Suddenly, the middle-aged man's face changed drastically. The aura in his body suddenly surged, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Qin Zhao, what's the matter? The figure sitting cross-legged on the futon slowly opened his eyes. He turned his head and stared at the middle-aged man. This figure exuded a strong emperor's aura. Strangely, this person's eyebrows were white and long, falling on his cheeks. Emperor Bai, my daughter used the jade pendant just now. I gave it to her. She will only use it when she is in a life-and-death situation, so. The middle-aged man quickly bowed and said. Emperor Bai was astonished and said, who in the imperial capital doesn't know your daughter? Someone actually dares to harm your daughter? I don't know. Now that my daughter's life is at stake, would your majesty White Emperor? Qin Zhao said anxiously. Let's go, I'll go with you. I want to see who exactly dares to cause trouble in the imperial capital. Emperor Bai stood up and walked out of the throne room slowly. Qin Zhao was overjoyed and quickly followed him. He had not expected Emperor Bai to show up personally. However, he knew that Emperor Bai was doing this for his sake. That was why he had accompanied him to take a look. At the same time, it was also to build his reputation. After all, it had only been a few months since the White Emperor had promoted him to his current position. Although his reputation in the imperial capital was widespread enough, there were still some people who were unconvinced. If the White Emperor appeared in the imperial capital with him this time, the other voices of opposition would probably gradually lessen. Swoosh swoosh. Emperor Bai and Qin Zhao both had extraordinary cultivation. They took a few steps in the air and arrived at the street where Qin Xuanmei was. When Qin Zhao saw Qin Xuanmei, whose neck was bitten by the three-headed snake and whose cheeks were green and black, his face suddenly changed. Evil beast! Qin Zhao only felt his blood boil. He took a step forward and came to Qin Xuanmei's side. The three-headed snake naturally saw Qin Zhao and immediately fled. It could feel the powerful aura on Qin Zhao's body. Want to run? Die! Qin Zhao shouted angrily. Terrifying yuan power gushed out. Suddenly, countless yuan power arrows appeared on the surface of his body and flew in the direction of the three-headed snake. The three-headed snake screamed and twisted its tail to dodge the arrows. However, there were too many yuan power arrows. The three-headed snake's tail was directly pierced by a yuan power arrow. Blood spurted out and its body froze in mid-air. Then, countless yuan power arrows pierced through it. Puff! The three-headed snake screamed and fell to the ground from mid-air. Its snake body kept twitching and its aura gradually weakened. After killing the three-headed snake, Qin Zhao immediately came to Qin Xuanmei's side and spat out his yuan power to prevent the poison from spreading in Qin Xuanmei's body. Xuanmei, this three-headed snake is only at the ultimate 8-wheel emperor realm. You have Qin Lu and Qin Yang protecting you. How did it bite you? Qin Zhao asked while expelling the poison for Qin Xuanmei. At the same time, he was extremely puzzled. Qin Lu and Qin Yang were both at the ultimate 9-wheel emperor realm. How could Qin Xuanmei be bitten by the three-headed snake? Moreover, he also found that Qin Lu and Qin Yang seemed to have disappeared. There was a pool of blood on the ground, which gave him a bad feeling. Father. It was that guy who killed Qin Lu and Qin Yang. It was because of him that I was bitten by the three-headed snake. Qin Xuanmei pointed her jade-like finger at Zhuowen, who was not far away. Her eyes were filled with intense hatred. Her expression was agitated and her chest was heaving up and down like a bellows. Qin Zhao slowly tilted his head. His cold gaze fell on Zhuowen, who was not far away. He said in a deep voice, "You killed Qin Yang and Qin Lu. Do you know who I am?" At this moment, the surrounding people also fell silent. Their gazes fell on Qin Zhao and Emperor Bai, and they all revealed looks of whispering. It's actually the country guarding Marquis, Qin Zhao. Even Emperor Bai accompanied him here. He really has a lot of face. Of course. Otherwise, how could the country guarding Marquis rise so quickly? Of course, this is also related to the country guarding Marquis's strength and talent. He has already reached the peak of the heavenly venerable realm at the mere age of 37. I'm afraid that he has a high chance of entering the Emperor realm. That's why Emperor Bai thinks so highly of him. Zhuowen crossed his arms. He stared at Qin Zhao with a strange gaze and said, "The surrounding people all said that you are the country guarding Marquis. So what?" Zhuowen's reaction greatly exceeded Qin Zhao's expectations. He originally thought that after hearing his name, Zhuowen would be afraid, fearful, and even regretful. However, he did not see any of these emotions on Zhuowen's face. The only thing that remained was that eternal calmness. This reaction instantly enraged Qin Zhao. He coldly shouted, "Now, you have two choices. First, cripple your own cultivation, kneel on the ground, and crawl over to apologize to Xuanmei. Second, I will cripple you and throw you into the Imperial City's dungeon, never to see the light of day again. Then what if I choose neither of the two choices?" Zhuowen suddenly replied indifferently. When these words came out, it naturally caused quite a commotion. Everyone's gazes became increasingly strange. This youth was a little too calm. Facing the country guarding Marquis, who was extremely popular in the Black Dragon Empire, he actually did not seem to care. It was truly strange. Then I will take it that you have chosen the second choice by default. A cruel smile appeared on Qin Zhao's face. Yuan power burst out from his body. Soon after, he took a step forward and appeared in front of Zhuowen as if he had teleported. He stretched out his right hand and surging Yuan power gushed out. It formed a huge Yuan power mountain and smashed down on Zhuowen's head. However, Zhuowen just stood there quietly. He did not move, not even lifting his hand. Looking at Zhuowen's appearance, the smile on Qin Zhao's face became even wider. He almost laughed out loud. However, his smile quickly froze. This was because a familiar figure suddenly blocked in front of him. Then, this figure quietly stretched out a hand and gently squeezed. Qin Zhao's attack immediately collapsed. Then, a vast emperor's aura came crushing down. Qin Zhao's forward momentum suddenly stopped. Then, his cheeks flushed red and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He flew backwards and heavily smashed into the ground a dozen meters away. "Your Majesty Emperor Bai, you," Qin Zhao barely propped himself up. He stared blankly at the figure that appeared in front of him. This person was none other than Emperor Bai, who had come with him. He was also the supreme leader of the Black Dragon Empire. His heart was filled with doubts. Why did Emperor Bai suddenly attack him? Was it because of the young man behind him? Many people around were also confused. From Qin Zhao attacking the mysterious young man to Emperor Bai suddenly intercepting Qin Zhao, everything had happened too quickly. However, some warriors with keen senses had already noticed that the mysterious young man was not ordinary. Emperor Bai's action was obviously to protect the young man. So, who was this young man? Emperor Bai glanced indifferently at the puzzled Qin Zhao before turning around. Under everyone's gaze, he knelt on one knee in front of Zhuowen and respectfully said, "By my greets, master." At this moment, the entire street was silent. In that silence, only Bai Mai's voice echoed. Although his voice was not loud, in everyone's ears, it was so loud and clear that it was boundless. This scene was unbelievable in everyone's eyes. Emperor Bai, the ruler of the Black Dragon Empire, knelt on one knee in front of a young man in front of everyone and called him master. Everyone subconsciously dug their ears, thinking that what they heard was an illusion. Qin Zhao's hands, which were propping himself up, trembled violently. He fell to the ground again involuntarily. He stared at Emperor Bai, who was kneeling on the ground, with his mouth wide open. Emperor Bai's master? Could it be? Qin Zhao muttered softly. He seemed to have thought of something. His eyes suddenly revealed a tinge of regret and fear. He suddenly thought of a person in his mind. A person who had once subverted the entire Qing Xian Empire. Qin Xuanmei, who was standing not far away, was shocked and confused. The hatred in her eyes had long been replaced by shock and confusion. The strongest person in the empire, Emperor Bai, was kneeling on one knee in front of the young man. This scene was too shocking. Zhuowen stared at Emperor Bai, who looked a little nervous. He nodded lightly and said, "Get up." "Yes." Emperor Bai got up slowly and said guiltily, "Master, I did not know that you would suddenly come to visit. I did not know that Qin Xuanmei dared to offend you. Please forgive me. If Master feels uncomfortable, I will immediately kill Qin Xuanmei and Qin Zhao to relieve Master's hatred." Chapter 1302 The Flying Serpent Has No Feet. Plop. Suddenly, Qin Zhao and Qin Xuanmei kneeled on the ground and said in a trembling voice, "Your Majesty by Di, please calm down. Please forgive us. Qin Zhao and my daughter did not recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive us." Thump, thump, thump. At the same time, Qin Zhao kept kowtowing. His forehead hit the ground and made a dull sound. The people around him were shocked. Qin Zhao, the country guarding Marquis of the Black Dragon Empire, knelt on the ground and kowtowed. This scene shocked many warriors in the imperial capital. Bai Mai was unmoved. His gaze fell on Zhuowen. He bowed and said respectfully, "Master, how do you want to punish them?" At this moment, Bai Mai was a little nervous. He was the one who promoted the country guarding Marquis. This time, he came out to build momentum for the country guarding Marquis and stabilize his position. However, he did not expect that Qin Xuanmei, the daughter of the country guarding Marquis, would offend his master, Zhuowen. Bai Mai's only thought was to cut ties with the country guarding Marquis. Bai Mai also realized that he could not see through Zhuowen's aura. He remembered that a few months ago, before Zhuowen went to the Misery Sea, he was only at the peak of the celestial venerable rank. However, he could not see through him now. This could only mean that Zhuowen's cultivation had also broken through to the Emperor realm. Thinking of this, Bai Mai was shocked. He knew that when Zhuowen was at the peak of the celestial venerable rank, he had killed someone in the Emperor realm. Now that he had advanced to the Emperor realm, his strength must be even more terrifying. "Do as you see fit," Zhuowen said indifferently. Bai Mai nodded and turned around. He clenched his right hand and his origin energy turned into a palm. He pointed at Qin Zhao and Qin Xuanmei's lower abdomens. With the sound of a balloon bursting, the two of them spat out a mouthful of blood. "Today, I will destroy your cultivation. From now on, Qin Zhao, your title as the country guarding Marquis will be taken away. You will be a commoner and will not be able to enter the imperial capital." After doing this, the white-browed man turned around and stood respectfully behind Zhuowen with a flattering smile on his face. How ruthless! When the surrounding crowd saw Bai Mai's action, they could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. To a cultivator, crippling his dantian was more cruel than killing him. In this world where martial arts reigned supreme, if one did not have cultivation and strength, they would eventually be reduced to the lowest rung of society and be bullied and humiliated. As for the Marquis Qin Zhao and Qin Xuanmei, they had offended many people. Now that they had offended someone they should not have offended, their cultivation had been destroyed by Emperor Bai. If the two of them were to fall into the hands of their enemies, they would suffer a fate worse than death. Qin Zhao and Qin Xuanmei's faces were as pale as snow. Their eyes were filled with despair. They knew they were done for. "White Brow, take me to the imperial city's prison." Zhuowen did not pay attention to Qin Zhao and Qin Xuanmei. To him, they were not on the same level. He did not need to pay too much attention to them. Yes, master. Bai Mai cupped his hands together and took the lead, heading towards the underground prison of the imperial city. Zhuoan quietly followed behind him. Rumble. The moment Bai Mai and Zhuoan took off, the throne room in the depths of the imperial city suddenly shook, and the huge throne room suddenly collapsed. What happened? Why did the throne room suddenly collapse? All the cultivators in the imperial capital raised their heads and looked at the collapsed throne room. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Bai Mai and Zhuoan, who were heading towards the underground prison of the imperial city, also stopped and looked in the direction of the throne room in confusion. Rumble. The instant the throne room collapsed, a gigantic black figure that was thousands of feet tall suddenly soared into the sky. That gigantic body stretched across the horizon like a bridge that led to the endless void, as if there was no end to it. The huge figure that appeared above the throne room had a huge snake body that was close to 1,000 feet long. The green scales on its body shone with a terrifying cold light. What was even more strange was that on the back of the huge snake, there was a pair of huge flaming wings that were hundreds of feet long. They looked dazzling. Flying serpent has no feet to fly. Zhuoan's eyes narrowed as he stared at the huge snake body that appeared in the sky and muttered, "Who is it? Killing my bloodline again. The bloodline that I painstakingly nurtured has been killed again. Damn it." The flying serpent roared at the sky. The rolling sound waves were extremely powerful and resounded in everyone's ears. Many warriors covered their ears with their hands, their faces contorted in pain. There were even some weaker martial artists whose faces flushed red and spat out blood under this roar. They actually fainted on the spot. What a terrifying creature. It seems to be a flying serpent with an ancient bloodline. The warriors in the imperial city stared at the roaring flying serpent with fear in their eyes. The flying serpent's roar was already so powerful. If a battle really broke out, it would be earth-shattering. Swoosh. The flying serpent spread its wings and came to the three-headed snake that was lying in a pool of blood. Its huge eyes were filled with terrifying anger. The three-headed snake that was covered with golden patterns was completely dead. Its bloodline had been killed again. The flying serpent was almost mad with anger. Damn humans. All of you must die. Die, die, die. The flying serpent roared and swung its huge tail. Suddenly, with it as the epicenter, a terrifying gust of wind swept up in 100 feet radius. The gust of wind was as sharp as a blade. The warriors in the 100 feet radius did not even have time to react before they were shredded into pieces by the gust of wind. All the buildings in the area collapsed into ruins. Run! The other warriors in the 100 feet radius screamed and retreated. At the same time, their eyes fell on Bai Mai. Emperor Bai, please do something. The flying serpent is too terrifying. I'm afraid its strength has reached the Emperor realm. Emperor Bai was the strongest person in the Black Dragon Empire. Naturally, they would ask for his help immediately. Bai Mai's eyes became extremely solemn. He could feel the terrifying aura from the flying serpent. This aura even made him shudder. At this moment, the soaring serpent had also noticed Bai Mai and Zhuoan who was following behind. Immediately, it was stunned, its large eyes staring fixedly at Zhuoan as it said in a venomous voice, "It's you again, it's you again. You must have killed my bloodline again. I want you to pay with your blood." Swoosh. With a furious roar, the soaring serpent charged towards Zhuoan. Zhuoan looked at the flying serpent with a strange gaze. He was speechless. The flying serpent was really unlucky. The bloodline that it had painstakingly nurtured was killed one after another. Moreover, both times the bloodline was killed, it was directly or indirectly related to Zhuoan. The first time was when Zhuoan killed the three-headed flaming spiritual serpent king. Now, the three-headed snake was also killed because of him. Thinking about it, it seemed that Zhuoan and the flying serpent were destined to clash. "How dare you, evil creature!" Bai Mai cried out loudly and took a step forward. Immediately, a several thousand feet large Bai Mai giant eagle appeared under his feet. With a swoosh sound, both man and eagle shot forward and headed towards the flying serpent. Emperor Bai has used his armor spirit. He should be able to stop the flying serpent. Looking at Bai Mai standing on the huge white-browed eagle, many people in the imperial capital calmed down. Emperor Bai's strength had been deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people in the past few months. Therefore, whenever Emperor Bai fought, many warriors in the imperial capital would subconsciously think that Emperor Bai would win. A mere first-level Emperor realm trash dares to stop me? The flying serpent snorted and flapped its wings. A violent wind swept out and hit Bai Mai. Instantly, the huge white-browed eagle under his feet was annihilated. Fart! Bai Mai spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backwards. He landed heavily on the ground. The imperial capital fell silent in an instant. Emperor Bai had been defeated too quickly. He had been sent flying by the flying serpent as soon as they came into contact. Wasn't the difference a little too big? After a moment of silence, the countless martial artists in the imperial capital were filled with fear. If even the White Emperor was no match for this soaring serpent, who else could? Emperor Bai just called that young man as his master. Perhaps that young man can stop the flying serpent. You're right. Emperor Bai is an Emperor realm warrior. For Emperor Bai to call him master, this young man is at least a middle-level emperor. He should have no problem dealing with the flying serpent. The warriors in the imperial capital stared at Zhuowen, who was not far away. Their eyes were filled with hope, as if they were grasping at a life-saving straw. Despicable human, you've improved quite quickly. You're already a second-level emperor. However, with your strength, it's still not enough to stop me. The flying serpent's loud voice suddenly rang out. The warriors in the imperial capital who had been filled with hope suddenly became gloomy. He's only a second-level emperor. I'm afraid he's no match for the flying serpent. Looks like the imperial capital is doomed. Not long after the flying serpent's words, many warriors in the imperial capital began to retreat and leave the imperial capital. The soaring serpent's aura was terrifying. It was probably comparable to a mid-level great emperor. Without a mid-level great emperor, it would be difficult to suppress the soaring serpent, let alone the mysterious young man who was only a second-level great emperor. Not enough. Zhuowen slowly raised his head, the corner of his mouth curling into a cold smile. He took a step forward and condensed his immortal chi. A tiger head great spear appeared in his hand. It was the high-grade emperor weapon he had obtained from the emperor's tomb, the tiger head clear golden spear. Boom! Zhuowen's right hand tightened and his arm abruptly stopped in front of him. The tiger head clear golden spear continued to spin as earth-shaking tiger roars resounded throughout the world. Humph! You're courting death. The flying serpent snorted coldly. With a swing of its tail, it swept out with countless astral winds, as if it was crushing the entire space. Boom! The flying serpent's tail collided with the tiger head clear golden spear. Both of them exploded with terrifying energy. Slash! Soon after, countless cultivators in the imperial capital were shocked to discover that the soaring serpent's enormous tail was cut off like tofu by the tiger head clear gold spear. It fell from the sky, and countless drops of blood drifted down from the sky. Chapter 1303. Saint Rune Law. The flying serpent screamed as it flapped its wings and retreated a few dozen steps. It stared at Zhuowen in shock. The flying serpent had an ancient bloodline and its body was tough and strong. Even a mid-level emperor would find it difficult to break its body. However, the young man in front of it was only a second-level emperor, but he had cut off its tail in one move. It was terrifying. The flying serpent's attention quickly fell on the tiger head clear golden spear in Zhuowen's hand. It asked in a low voice, "Is that a high-grade emperor weapon?" Zhuowen's lips curled into a smile. He did not say a word. He stepped forward and immortal energy surged out from his body, infusing it into the tiger head clear golden spear. A milky white light shot into the sky and a terrifying aura came crashing down, causing the flying serpent to tremble. "Human. Just you wait. I won't let you go so easily." The flying serpent roared furiously. It flapped its wings and disappeared from the sky above the imperial capital like a gust of wind. In the blink of an eye, it appeared a few hundred meters away. "You can't escape." The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up in an arc. Purple lightning spread out from his back, forming a 10-meter-long pair of purple lightning wings. Soon after, there was a rumbling sound as Zhuo Wen disappeared from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was already 1,000 meters away, blocking the soaring serpent's path. Die. Zhuo Wen did not hold back. He twisted his right palm and the tiger head clear golden spear spun at high speed. Tiger roars rang out, causing the flying serpent to fall into a momentary daze. Fart. When the flying serpent recovered from its daze, the tiger head clear golden spear had already arrived. The tip of the spear shone with a sharp light as it touched the flying serpent's jaw. Light bloomed and the tiger head clear golden spear pierced through the flying serpent's huge body. The moment the tiger head clear golden spear pierced through the flying serpent's body, it began to expand until it was 1,000 feet long. The sharp tip of the spear pierced through the flying serpent's tail and stopped at the flying serpent's jaw. Let me go. Meng Shi stared fixedly at Zhuo Wen, his pierced lower jaw trembling slightly as he emitted a rather muffled sound. Zhuo Wen did not say anything. His right palm suddenly spun, and surging immortal force swept out. The tiger head clear gold spear emitted a resounding buzzing sound, and immediately, the soaring serpent's eyes revealed a pained expression. Poochie. An earth-shattering wail rang out. The soaring serpent's colossal body collapsed inch by inch under the tiger head clear golden spear. Countless droplets of blood fell from the sky, enveloping the entire imperial capital. In the instant that the soaring serpent exploded into a bloody mist, Zhuo Wen happened to catch a glimpse of a bright red bead floating within the bloody mist. With a wave of his right hand, Zhuo Wen drew the bead into his palm and examined it carefully. The surface of the bead was covered with bright blood patterns. They were densely packed and looked like snake scales. It was a picturesque sight. This is the soaring serpent Sniden. This soaring serpent possesses an ancient bloodline. The demonic force within this Sniden is probably extremely dense. This is good stuff. Xiao Hei's voice rang out, causing Zhuo Wen to nod his head. At the same time, he also thought of Wu Dai. After all, Wu Dai was the same as the soaring serpent, she also possessed an ancient bloodline. Perhaps this Sniden would be of great help to Wu Dai. At the same time, Zhuo Wen was also sighing in his heart. When he had first entered the dragon vein, the soaring serpent had given him an extremely strong deterrent force. At that time, he could only look up to the soaring serpent and flee in panic. But now, he only needed one move to kill the soaring serpent. Zhuo Wen felt that the world was unpredictable. At this moment, the entire imperial capital was raining blood, but the cultivators in the imperial capital did not seem to hear it. Their eyes were firmly fixed on the tall figure in the sky. Compared to the colossal soaring serpent, this figure seemed so small and insignificant. However, the power contained within this tiny figure shocked everyone. This was because the powerful and terrifying soaring serpent had been so easily dealt with by this person. So strong, all the cultivators could not help but murmur softly. Their feet seemed to be rooted to the ground as they stood on the spot, their lips trembling. At this moment, Bai Mai also stood up from the ground. He had personally witnessed the figure who had killed the soaring serpent with a single spear strike. His eyes were filled with respect and admiration. Bai Mai, let's go. Bai Mai, who was still in a daze, suddenly heard this voice and could not help but come back to his senses. He nodded his head and hurriedly followed Zhuo Wen in front of him. However, deep in his eyes, there was a deep emotion. No matter what, the soaring serpent had the strength of a mid-level martial emperor. However, in the hands of Zhuo Wen, it had been killed in an instant. This strength was indeed terrifying. After Zhuo Wen and Bai Mai left, the blood rain stopped. In the imperial capital, the cultivators who were still in a daze came back to their senses. Immediately, there was an uproar. So terrifying. Who exactly is that young man? His Majesty Emperor Bai called him master. The terrifying soaring serpent was killed in an instant. This is too powerful. I remember now. Do you know who was the one who destroyed the Qing Xian Empire? It's Zhuo Wen. Back then, Emperor Qing banished Zhuo Wen. Do you mean that young man is Zhuo Wen? After Zhuo Wen's name was mentioned, the surrounding cultivators all fell silent. Zhuo Wen's name could be said to be resounding in the Qing Xian Empire back then. Almost everyone knew him. Now that they heard this name again, everyone felt as if a lifetime had passed. They did not expect that the unknown young man from back then had become so powerful and terrifying. The same thought appeared in everyone's mind. This young man was too demonic. The imperial capital's dungeon was still enveloped in a huge sea of fire. Within the sea of fire, there were countless mysterious sealing forces. Standing above the sea of fire, Zhuowen quietly looked down and said softly, "Father, I'm back." Boom. A huge double-headed dragon came from the abyss below the sea of fire. On top of the double-headed dragon, a handsome middle-aged man was sitting cross-legged. At this moment, he raised his head slightly and stared at Zhuowen above. A bright light flashed in his eyes. "You've broken through?" Zhuo Xiaotian chuckled. "I've broken through," Zhuowen replied with a smile. Zhuo Xiaotian laughed and said, "Well done. Previously, you said that your dragon soul is extremely powerful and that you need to be in the Emperor realm to be able to materialize your dragon soul. Now that you've broken through, let me take a look." Zhuowen nodded and pointed at his forehead with his right hand. Suddenly, a dragon's roar surged out from his body. Then, a huge black dragon appeared above the sea of fire. The pair of dark golden dragon eyes looked down at Zhuowen below the sea of fire coldly and emotionlessly. Roar. The double-headed nether dragon below Zhuo Xiaotian's feet let out a low roar and started to become restless. The dragon's body kept shaking as it looked at the huge black dragon in the sky with fear. So huge, Baimai took a few steps back with fear in his eyes. The Great Abyss Saint Dragon's aura was very terrifying. Ordinary Emperor Realm martial artists would feel a sense of oppression and fear. What dragon soul is this? Zhuo Xiaotian's expression froze as he looked at Xiao He with a hint of doubt in his eyes. He could feel the terrifying aura coming from Xiao He. He dared to say that this black dragon was definitely an existence that surpassed the 7th grade. It might even be comparable to the 9th grade dragon soul of Rika. However, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out what the black dragon's name was. "Its name is the Great Abyss Saint Dragon," Zhuowen said softly. "The Great Abyss Saint Dragon?" Zhuo Xiaotian murmured in a low voice. Then, he stared at Zhuowen and said emotionally, "Zhuowen, the dragon soul in your body is very powerful. It's much more powerful than your father's. In the future, you might really be able to lead Rika back to glory. Father, take this." Zhuowen stretched out his right hand and took out the wooden token he obtained from the Emperor's tomb. There was a Saint Rune law engraved on the wooden token. Because Zhuowen's cultivation level wasn't high enough, he couldn't comprehend the Saint Rune law. It just so happened that Zhuo Xiaotian needed it. Zhuo Xiaotian spat out his right palm and blasted a palm-sized hole in the light barrier with all his strength. He then took the wooden token from the hole. At this moment, Zhuo Xiaotian's cultivation level had reached the 9th grade Emperor realm. Although he couldn't break the imprisonment array, he could still blast a palm-sized hole in the light barrier with all his strength. However, the hole was quickly repaired by the imprisonment array and returned to its original state. If Zhuo Xiaotian could become an invincible Emperor Realm Master, he could blast a huge hole in the light barrier. At that time, it wouldn't be difficult for him to escape with the help of the hole. After taking the wooden token, Zhuo Xiaotian's gaze fell on the strange runes on the surface of the wooden token. His eyes suddenly burst out with light. "Saint Rune Law? Zhuowen, where did you get the Saint Rune Law?" Zhuo Xiaotian asked excitedly. Zhuowen smiled and briefly explained the Emperor's tomb. Only then did Zhuo Xiaotian understand the origin of the wooden token. "Father, I don't know anything about the Saint Rune Law. May I know what the Saint Rune Law in this wooden token means?" Zhuowen asked curiously. Zhuo Xiaotian carefully examined the runes on the wooden token and said indifferently, "Although I haven't fully comprehended the Saint Rune Law, I can see that the Saint Rune Law in this wooden token should be the wind law of the elements. This kind of law is considered a relatively common law. It has a certain degree of attack power and also has powerful speed." "Wind law? Are there different types of laws?" Zhuowen was stunned and immediately asked. It was his first time coming into contact with the Saint Rune Law, so he was extremely curious about it. Of course there are different types. The Saint Rune law is a mysterious power comprehended by a saint from the laws of heaven and earth. There are various elements in the laws of heaven and earth, such as wind, lightning, the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and so on. In addition to some common laws, there are also some rare but extremely powerful laws, such as time, space, life, death, and so on. The world contains all things, so the laws of nature are also varied and varied. Zhuowen nodded and his eyes revealed a look of understanding. He continued, "Then what kind of law did father comprehend before?" Chapter 1304. The End of the Sea of Bitterness. Father, how long will it take to comprehend the law of wind? Zhuowen asked in a deep voice. Zhuowen was taken aback for a moment before replying, "This is the first time your father has come into contact with the law of wind. Although I have a ready-made law of Saint Runes in my possession, it will still take some time to comprehend and refine them into my body. Zhuowen, do you have other matters to attend to?" To tell you the truth, Zhuowen sighed softly and told his father about Mu Chunxue, causing a strange expression to appear on his face. Mu Chunxue, the current holy maiden of the Burning Heaven sect? At this point, Zhuo Xiaotian suddenly burst into laughter. "We father and son are really fated to meet each other. The other half we found is actually the saintess of the Burning Heaven sect. Your mother is the saintess of the previous generation, and your partner is actually the saintess of this generation." Zhuowen spread his hands and said helplessly, "Perhaps it's an ill-fated relationship." "It is indeed an ill-fated relationship. Boy, you can't let the Burning Heaven sect know about your feelings for that little girl. Otherwise, it will be very troublesome. Your father is a good example," Zhuo Xiaotian said with a sigh. Zhuowen fell silent, but soon after, he suddenly smiled and said, "Father, I don't agree with your point of view. Since I like Mu Chunxue, and Mu Chunxue likes me, we are mutually in love. In the future, I will lead Rika to rise, destroy the Blue Dragon Hall, and openly marry Mu Chunxue. So what if the Burning Heaven sect knows about our feelings? I will prove to the Burning Heaven sect that I, Zhuowen, am qualified to marry her." Staring at the youth in front of him, Zhuo Xiaotian's eyes were slightly moved, but he laughed and said, "Good, you're right. There's no need to hide things like feelings. Since both of you love each other, then be together. I believe that with your talent, you can definitely lead Rika to glory. When that time comes, I'm afraid that the Burning Heaven sect will try to curry favor with you." "Father, I heard that mother is trapped in the Burning Heaven sect's Burning Flame Pagoda. I wonder if she is in danger." Perhaps thinking of something, Zhuowen's gaze suddenly focused on Zhuo Xiaotian as he asked cautiously. The smile on Zhuo Xiaotian's face stiffened and a touch of sadness appeared in his eyes. "Xiao shouldn't be in any danger because she is the daughter of the current sect master. However, she might suffer because of me." Zhuowen's pupils shrank and he said in a deep voice, "Father, as long as you become an invincible emperor lord and then advance to a quasi-holy, or even a sage, I don't believe that the Burning Heaven sect master won't recognize you." Zhuowen shook his head and said, "Zhuowen, it's not that easy. Becoming a sage is more difficult than becoming an emperor realm expert. Moreover, with the strength of the Burning Heaven sect, they definitely have more than one sage. Even if I become a sage, the sect master won't necessarily recognize me. But even if I have to snatch Xiao, I will snatch her back. At that time, our family of 3 can have a good reunion." "Oh, right, how is your grandfather?" Zhuo Xiaotian suddenly asked, perhaps thinking of something. "Grandfather is in the Azure Dragon Hall. We plan to cultivate Rika forces there." Zhuowen replied softly. Zhuo Xiaotian nodded. Regarding the matter of the Azure Dragon Hall, Zhuowen had told him before. Even he could not help but envy Zhuowen's luck in his heart. To actually be able to profit from a disaster and obtain the inheritance of a saint, this luck could be said to be extremely heaven-defying. "Does your main body plan to enter the 9th Netherworld realm now?" Zhuo Xiaotian asked again. However, Zhuowen hesitated. Although he was worried about Mu Chunxue, he wanted to stay here and protect his father. After he completely comprehended the law of sacred runes and broke through to the invincible emperor realm, he would be able to break through the array. Looking at you, you should still be worried about your little lover. Don't worry about me, go to the 9th netherworld realm. After I successfully break through the array, I will go to the inner court to find you. Zhuo Xiaotian laughed and said rather heroically. Zhuoan looked at Zhuo Xiaotian gratefully and nodded solemnly, "Thank you, father. But be careful on the road. Your father will come to find you soon. When the time comes, I will be your backer." Zhuo Xiaotian said straightforwardly. "Okay." Zhuo Wen nodded solemnly. Then, he took a step into the air and disappeared from the sky above the imperial city like an arrow that had left the bow. Xiao Hei, on the other hand, transformed into a black beam of light and entered Zhuo Wen's body. "White brow, protect my father well. When my father escapes, he may give you a good fortune." After Zhuo Wen disappeared, his voice echoed between heaven and earth. White brow, who was floating not far away, nodded vigorously and bowed slightly in the direction that Zhuo Wen left. With Zhuo Wen's current speed, it naturally didn't take much time to return to Auspicious Spirit Island. However, when he returned to Auspicious Spirit Island, he heard a piece of bad news. Yarrow Dai had passed away 3 days ago. "Master, Aunt Yarrow, she, woo woo woo." When he returned to the pavilion where Wu Dai and Yarrow Dai were, Wu Dai threw herself into Zhuo Wen's arms and cried non-stop. Looking at Wu Dai's delicate appearance, a trace of pity rose in Zhuo Wen's heart. At this moment, close to 1,000 demon soldiers were kneeling on the ground outside the pavilion. Their eyes were filled with sorrow as they respectfully sent off old Wang. "Wu Dai, you're already a 4th-level demon emperor?" Patting Wu Dai's head, Zhuo Wen suddenly realized something. His right hand suddenly froze as he looked at Wu Dai with a strange expression. Wu Dai's emotions also stabilized, but the rim of her eyes was still a little red. She said in a low voice, "Before Aunt Yarrow passed away, she passed on all her demon power to me. That's why I was able to break through to the 4th-level demon emperor in such a short time." "I see." Zhuo Wen murmured with a look of understanding. "Master, before Aunt Yarrow passed away, her only wish was for me to enter the demon netherrealm in the 9 netherworld realm. She hoped that I could join the demon god palace in the demon nether realm. But speaking until here," Wu Dai bit her lower lip with her pearly white teeth. Her beautiful eyes were fixed on Zhuo Wen, her face full of grievance and reluctance. Looking at Wu Dai's appearance, Zhuo Wen naturally guessed what she was thinking. She probably couldn't bear to part with him. After all, although he was going to the 9 netherworld realm, he was going to the divine nether realm in the inner court. However, he knew about the demon nether realm. There was an extremely vast continent inside called the demon domain. That continent was filled with demon clan members. It was a paradise for demon clan members. Moreover, it was said that if a demon emperor entered the demon nether realm to cultivate, his cultivation speed would be much faster than outside. This was because the air in the demon nether realm was not filled with yuan qi, but demon qi. Demon qi could be directly absorbed by demon emperors and transformed into demon power. Although demon emperors could also use yuan qi to transform it into demon power, the process was much less efficient than absorbing demon qi. Therefore, Wu Dai entering the demon nether realm to cultivate was undoubtedly a wise decision. This was also Wu Dai's long-cherished wish. Zhuo Wen rubbed Wu Dai's head and smiled. "Since this is Wu Dai's long-cherished wish, you should follow her into the demon nether realm. That place is indeed suitable for demon emperors to cultivate. When you have some accomplishments, we will naturally meet again. Perhaps when we meet again, it will be you protecting me." Wu Dai curled her lips. However, she also knew that Zhuo Wen was right. The demon netherrealm was indeed very suitable for her to cultivate. If she still followed Zhuo Wen into the divine netherrealm, she was afraid that she would be pulled further and further away from Zhuo Wen. When that time came, she would probably become a burden to Zhuo Wen. Wu Dai was very clear about Zhuo Wen's talent. If she didn't work hard to improve herself, she wouldn't have the qualifications to stand beside Zhuo Wen when the time came. By the way, this is the inner core of a soaring dragon snake. Take it and refine it when you have time. It will be quite beneficial to you. Zhuo Wen took out an inner core from his spirit ring and handed it to Wu Dai with a smile. Wu Dai waved her jade-like hand and held it in her palm. A sweet smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Her previous depression instantly vanished as she sweetly said, "Master is still the best. Hee hee. We're going to the 9 Nether Realm now. By the way, what about these demon soldiers?" Withdrawing his right hand, Zhuoan suddenly pointed at the 1,000 demon soldiers behind him and turned his head to ask. "Naturally, they have to carry it with them. Aunt Yarrow gave me this before." As Wu Dai spoke, she extended her jade-like hand and took out a bull horn. The surface of the bull horn was engraved with complicated runes. It should be a fairly powerful emperor artifact. Wu Dai formed a seal with her right hand. Suddenly, spatial energy gushed out from the tip of the bull horn. Shortly after, the 1,000 demon soldiers outside disappeared on the spot. They turned into specks of light and entered the bull horn. Zhuoan looked at the bull horn in Wu Dai's hand in amazement. It seemed that this bull horn should be a spatial emperor artifact. It was actually able to carry over 1,000 demon soldiers. It was quite rare. After doing all this, Zhuoan chatted with Grandmaster Lan Miao for a while. Then, he took Wu Dai and left the auspicious God Island on the Sun-Moon shuttle. After Zhuoan left the auspicious God Island with Wu Dai, at the end of the Sea of Misery, a huge sailboat swept past the clouds. On the surface of the sea at the end of the Sea of Misery, there were 9 stone tablets floating. Each stone tablet was several thousand feet in size. They stood on the surface of the sea, towering between the heavens and the earth. They looked extremely majestic. On each of the 9 stone steles, there were words written on them. The first stone stele wrote Dragon Underworld, the second stone stele wrote Divine Underworld, and so on. The 9th stone stele wrote Night Underworld. Behind each stone tablet, there was a corresponding location of a netherworld, which was the entrance to the netherworld. The cloud sail stopped in front of the 9 stone tablets. Everyone on the deck stared at the 9 stone tablets with shock in their eyes. It was the first time that they had seen such a huge stone tablet. This is the end of the Sea of Misery. The area is extremely hidden. If you have not entered the 9 Netherworld realm, you will definitely not be able to find this sea area and these 9 huge stone tablets. Zhuoan, you can mark this place properly. When your real body comes over, you will not get lost. Standing at the head of the deck, Moyan Bai Yang's indifferent voice rang out as he explained the 9 stone tablets in front of everyone. The Sea of Misery is really big. The cloud sail is so fast, but it still took 2 months. Buddha Zhuoan stared at the 9 stone tablets and muttered in a low voice. "This time, we are entering the divine netherworld realm. There is a spatial teleportation array in these stone tablets. When we get close to these stone tablets, we will be teleported into the divine netherworld realm. However, during the process of entering, there will be a powerful spatial tearing force. If martial artists below the Emperor realm enter, they will definitely die. So, if your strength is below the Emperor realm, please take care of those around you." Chapter 1305. Divine Netherrealm. The moment it entered the stone tablet, the cloud-piercing sail actually shook violently, causing everyone on the deck to stagger. Fortunately, none of them were ordinary people, so they quickly recovered. What a strong tearing force. On the deck, Buddha Zhuoan instantly noticed the tearing force around his body. His Buddha avatar's body had already reached the level of immortality. Although the tearing force was strong, when it landed on his body, it did not cause him to be harmed in the slightest. On the other hand, the others all released their origin energy, forming a protective barrier around their bodies, resisting the powerful tearing force that surged towards them. "Everyone, hold on for a while. This teleportation process won't take long," Moyan Bai Yang cautiously instructed. Sure enough, after the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the tearing force around them completely disappeared. Everyone only felt their vision change, and they discovered that the cloud-piercing sail was actually floating on top of a rather steep cliff. This cliff was not high, and at the bottom of the cliff, there was a group of people gathered. The arrival of the cloud-piercing sail naturally attracted the attention of this group of people, but they only took a glance and no longer paid attention to it. This was because ships would often pass by the entrance of the divine nether realm, so they were not surprised. That is, Buddha Zhuoan and the rest quickly noticed that there was an extremely large stone arch in front of them. At this moment, in front of the stone arch, there were dozens of lines, and each line had nearly 1,000 people, like a long dragon. There are actually 3 suns. Suddenly, Lu Hantian's surprised voice resounded. It attracted the attention of the other people on the deck. They raised their heads and saw that there were 3 huge suns floating in the azure sky. They were emitting a scorching heat which made everyone's body feel hot and dry. The divine Netherrealm is a small world created by the combined efforts of the saints who lived there. Some of the natural landscapes inside were created with the aesthetics of the saints. It's not strange for there to be 3 suns. Mo Yang Bai Yang explained with a smile. As the principal of the Divine Academy's outer court, he had naturally entered before, so his understanding of the divine Netherrealm was naturally much better than everyone else. That stone arch is a divine gate, the entrance to the divine Netherrealm. However, you have to pay a certain amount of spirit stones to enter. Mo Yang Bai Yang explained once again. How many spirit stones do you need? Zhuoan asked curiously. 1 top-grade spirit stone per person. Moyan Bai Yang shrugged his shoulders and said. So expensive. As soon as this was said, everyone looked at each other. Most of them did not have top-grade spirit stones on them, so this became a problem for them. Don't worry, I have enough top-level spirit stones with me. Just follow me when the time comes. Moyan Bai Yang smiled. With a wave of his sleeve, he stored the cloud-piercing sail into his spirit ring. Soon after, he led everyone to choose a team and waited silently. There were dozens of guards standing at the gate. Each of them wore a special uniform. Zhuoan noticed that they were all mid-level emperors. The guards at the gate were also mid-level emperors. The 9 Netherrealm was indeed worthy of being the holy land of martial Dao in the Eastern Land. The number of experts inside would probably far exceed everyone's expectations. After getting off the cloud-piercing sail, the demon Dao avatar had already turned into a demon eye and hid in Zhuoan's body. In the process of waiting, Zhuoan silently comprehended the mysteries of the Buddha and demon energies, trying to understand the reason why the two were incompatible. During the 2 months on the cloud-piercing sail, Zhuoan had tried to combine the Buddha and demon energies to create a powerful Buddha and demon energies. However, it ended in failure. Although he failed, Zhuoan had some gains. He discovered that if he combined a small amount of Buddha and demon energies, he could create a palm-sized Buddha and demon lotus. However, its power was extremely limited, not even comparable to the full power attack of his demon Dao avatar. However, Zhuoan was unwilling to give up. He knew that if he combined all the Buddha and demon energies of his demon Dao avatar and demon Dao avatar, the power produced would definitely be earth-shattering. However, he did not have the ability to do so. Back then, how did the fighting Buddha demon saint combine these 2 completely different types of energy and create the power of Buddha and demon? The more he comprehended the essence of the 2 energies, the more terrifying Zhuoan felt that the fighting Buddha demon saint was. To be able to go against common sense and combine Buddha and demon Dao was an extremely crazy thing. Moreover, the fighting Buddha demon saint was able to accomplish such a crazy thing. Zhuoan could not help but admire him. The team advanced in an orderly manner. After about 4 hours, it was Moyan and Bai Yang's turn. Moyan and Bai Yang paid 12 pieces of top-grade spirit stones. Although Moyan and Bai Yang were elegant, Zhuoan could keenly sense that the corners of Moyan and Bai Yang's eyes were slightly twitching. Obviously, 12 pieces of top-grade spirit stones were quite a large expense for Moyan and Bai Yang. Let's go in. After the guard received the spirit stones, he said and no longer paid any attention to Moyan and Bai Yang's group. Let's go. After passing through the divine gate, everyone realized that the scenery on the other side of the divine gate was completely different. They were standing on a stone platform that was dozens of feet wide. This stone platform was suspended above the clouds. A gentle breeze blew past and swept past their faces, giving them a numb feeling. What a vast continent! Is the continent below the divine Netherrealm? Standing on the edge of the stone platform, Zhuoan looked down. There were valleys with birds chirping and flowers fragrant. There were tall and straight mountain peaks that were like pine trees. There were picturesque plains and densely packed cities on the ground. Moreover, everyone also noticed that on the vast land below, there was a river that was as wide as a python. It extended from one end of the continent to the other end. It actually divided the entire continent into two. At a glance, it looked like a Taiji diagram. That river is the Divine River. The Divine River is the most famous scenery in the Divine Nether Realm. This Divine River has the effect of curing hundreds of poisons. Moreover, after drinking it, it can strengthen the physique of an ordinary human. It also has the effect of prolonging one's life. However, these effects are not too obvious for Imperial Power Realm warriors. Moyan and Bai Yang pointed at the huge river below and explained with a smile. This divine river actually has such an effect. No wonder the warriors in the 9th Netherworld realm are generally stronger than those in the outside world. I'm afraid it has something to do with the special geographical location of the 9th Netherworld realm. Lu Hantian stared at the divine river with a sharp light in his eyes. Although this divine river did not have much of an effect on the Imperial Power Realm, the humans who were born in the divine Nether Realm, if they bathed in the divine river from a young age and drank the water of the divine river as they grew up, regardless of physique or aptitude, they would far surpass many warriors in the outside world. After all, the starting line of the warriors in the 9th Netherworld realm was much higher than that of the outside world. At the end of the divine river is the Endless Mountain Range. That mountain range is the territory of the Divine Nether Academy. Within the Endless Mountain Range, there are 9 huge mountain peaks. You should have noticed them, right? Moyan and Bai Yang pointed at the distance. Zhuoan and the rest could see the Endless Mountain Range at the end of the Divine River. Just as Moyan and Bai Yang had said, there were 9 towering mountain peaks within the mountain range. These 9 mountain peaks were extremely eye-catching. Because if one looked carefully, one could see that these 9 mountain peaks did not appear to be naturally formed. Instead, they appeared to be man-made. These 9 mountain peaks are the core buildings of the Inner Academy. Every mountain peak represents a great power within the Inner Academy. The sky capital peak that Elder Huaxia is at is one of these 9 mountain peaks. When Elder Huaxia was mentioned, there was a slight fluctuation in Moyan and Bai Yang's eyes. If Elder Huaxia had not risked his life to use a secret technique, he would not have been able to escape from Mu Feng's evil clutches. Other than the sky capital peak, what are the other 8 mountain peaks called? Jianan, who had a lively character, asked with great interest. The other 8 mountain peaks are the Mysterious Underworld Peak, Yangming Peak, Mysterious Yuan Peak, Great Void Peak, Taichung Peak, Great Jade Peak, Hidden Sword Peak and Divine Devil Peak. These 8 mountain peaks and the Sky Capital Peak are the central area of the entire Inner Academy. It is also the gathering place of the Inner Academy's disciples. Before Moyan and Bai Yang could open their mouths, Moyan Wushang, who was standing beside them, took the initiative to speak. His clear and melodious voice was like that of an oriole. Of course, other than the 9 mountain peaks of the Inner Academy, there is another building that is extremely famous. It is the Ice and Fire Dual Polarity Palace. It is said that the Ice and Fire Dual Polarity Palace contains the core origin of the holy symbol of ice and fire. Its power is boundless and its aura is monstrous. Many disciples of the Inner Academy use the Ice and Fire Dual Polarity Palace to cultivate. Its nature is similar to the cultivation tower of the Outer Academy. However, the Ice and Fire Dual Polarity Palace is many times more helpful to cultivation than the cultivation tower. When Moyan Wushang said this, Zhuoan, who was not far away, gradually narrowed his eyes. He thought to himself, the Ice and Fire Dual Polarity Palace? When he had obtained the trace of origin of the holy symbol of Ice and Fire Dual Polarity Palace, the symbol spirit had suddenly appeared and set a promise with him of 10 years. It wanted him to reach the Inner Academy of Fine Deity Academy within 10 years and pass the first 8 levels of the Ice and Fire Dual Polarity Palace. At that time, the symbol spirit would pull him into the deepest level of the Ice and Fire Dual Polarity Palace and obtain the real holy symbol of ice and fire. Moreover, there was still a few years before the 10 years, so Zhuoan was not in a hurry. Let's go. Let's enter the Inner Academy's Sky Capital Peak first. I still have to give the identity token of Elder Huaxia to the Sky Capital Peak's Old Man Tianju. After all, Elder Huaxia died in the Outer Academy, so I have to give the Sky Capital Peak an explanation. Moyan Bai Yang waved his sleeves and took out the sky-piercing sail again. He led the group across the entire continent and swept toward the end of the Divine River. Not long after Moyan Bai Yang and the others left, a black cloud rapidly swept over in front of the 9 huge stone tablets at the end of the Bitter Sea and stopped in front of the tablets. The black cloud slowly wriggled and revealed a tall and straight figure. This person's eyes were pitch black as he stared at the first tablet of the Dragon Wasteland. He sneered and said, "Let's enter the Dragon Wasteland first." With Mu Feng's status, I should be able to obtain a high position in the Blue Dragon Hall soon. As long as I release Zhuowen's news, the Blue Dragon Hall will naturally help me get rid of that little bastard. Hee hee. Chapter 1306. Hall Master. The scenery of the Dragon Wasteland was completely different from that of the Divine Wasteland. It was similarly a huge small world, with plains, mountains, rivers, and many cities. However, it was not the sun that was suspended in the sky above the Dragon Wasteland. Instead, it was 100,000 feet large green dragon. Green light flickered in this world, dyeing it green, causing it to appear extremely strange. At the center of the Dragon Wasteland was an extremely huge building complex. Every single building was in the shape of a dragon, representing a huge dragon. The interior was arranged in a picturesque manner, with hundreds and thousands of buildings scattered all over. Every single one of them was in the shape of a dragon, appearing as though 10,000 dragons had emerged from the sea. It was an extremely spectacular sight. At the center of the building complex was an extremely huge stone dragon. This stone dragon roared towards the sky. Its dragon scales were distinct, arranged in a picturesque manner, and appeared extremely lifelike. If one were to carefully observe it, one would discover that this stone dragon contained a huge palace. This palace was the Blue Dragon Hall, the overlord faction of the Dragon Wasteland. Swoosh! Mu Feng's speed was extremely quick, and he landed in front of this palace. There were 2 guards in green armor at the entrance of the palace. When Mu Feng approached, the 2 of them subconsciously blocked him outside. "I am the 10th Green Dragon Envoy, Feng Mu. Do the 2 of you dare to stop me?" Mu Feng took out his identity token and spoke in an indifferent voice. The 2 guards glanced at the identity token, before bowing and saying, "So it's Lord Green Dragon Envoy. Please forgive us for our earlier offense." Mu Feng nodded, before keeping his identity token. Soon after, he entered the palace. "10th brother?" Not long after Mu Feng entered the palace, a surprised voice was transmitted from his side. Mu Feng turned his head to look, and immediately saw 2 figures walking over from his left side. One of the 2 figures was a hunchbacked, white-haired old man, while the other was a fair-faced young man. The only similarity was that the auras from these 2 people were extremely frightening. They were even stronger than the 8th Green Dragon Envoy that Mu Feng had summoned back then. The black chi in Mu Feng's eyes slowly withdrew, as a slight smile appeared from the corners of his mouth. "It's actually 6th brother and 7th brother." From Mu Feng's words, one could tell that these 2 were likely the 6th and 7th Green Dragon Envoy. "Old 10, it's been a long time since you left the Dragon Wasteland. I really don't know what you were doing when you left." The stooped, white-haired old man narrowed his eyes and spoke in a sinister tone. This old man was the 6th Azure Dragon Envoy, while the young man beside him was the 7th Azure Dragon Envoy. When the 2 of them saw Mu Feng, they didn't show any enthusiasm. Instead, they were somewhat eccentric. Mu Feng's eyes narrowed slightly, before he replied with a faint smile, "6th brother, you must be joking. During this period of time, I've also been traveling outside to see if I can obtain some opportunities and fortuitous encounters." "Oh. Then, Old 10, did you obtain an opportunity?" The 6th Azure Dragon Envoy laughed. "There was, but it was all for naught in the end." When he said those words, Mu Feng revealed an expression of pity. His appearance naturally attracted the interest of the 6th Azure Dragon Envoy and the 7th Azure Dragon Envoy. "Old 10, Tell me about it. The seventh Azure Dragon envoy asked curiously. Mu Feng's eyes flickered as he recounted the events that had happened in the Sea of Misery. He spoke about the Emperor's tomb, the Arcana Saint Master's inheritance, and the death of the eighth Azure Dragon envoy. Old 8 is dead. The sixth Azure Dragon envoy and the seventh Azure Dragon envoy looked at each other. Their expressions immediately became ugly. Although the 10 great Azure Dragon envoys of the Blue Dragon Hall were all on their own, there were naturally good and bad relationships between them. The 6th, 7th, and 8th Azure Dragon envoys were usually very close. Although they weren't like blood brothers, they weren't far off. Now that they heard that the 8th Azure Dragon envoy had actually died, their expressions naturally became ugly. That's right. Old 8th was killed by that Shuo Wen, because that fellow had obtained the inheritance of the Emperor's tomb's master. Moreover, he had also obtained a profound saint artifact from within. It was precisely by relying on that profound saint artifact that Shuo Wen was able to catch Old 8th off guard and kill him, Mu Feng said meaningfully. The inheritance of an Arcana Saint Master and a profound saint artifact. The 6th and 7th Azure Dragon envoys exclaimed in a low voice. Soon after, a trace of greed appeared in their eyes. Profound saint artifacts were extremely precious items to them. Seeing the greed in their eyes, a trace of a smile appeared at the corner of Mu Feng's mouth. He only said that Zhuoan possessed a profound saint artifact. However, he didn't say that the profound saint artifact was actually severely damaged. His goal was to arouse the greed of the two. Moreover, that Zhuoan is a Rika descendant. If I'm not wrong, the dragon soul that has awakened within his body should be a grade 9 dragon soul. Mu Feng suddenly said in a serious tone. When these words were spoken, the pupils of the 6th and 7th Azure Dragon envoys shrank as they stared at Mu Feng. Only then did the 6th Azure Dragon envoy say in a somewhat serious tone, Old 10, you're not speaking nonsense, right? That Zhuoan is really a Rika descendant and even possesses a grade 9 dragon soul? Both of them knew how terrifying a grade 9 dragon soul was. Because, 10,000 years ago, every patriarch of the Rika Hall had awakened a grade 9 dragon soul. Every patriarch of the Rika Hall was basically a world-shaking figure. 10,000 years ago, a grade 9 dragon soul actually represented a peerless genius. If they didn't fall, they would definitely become an extremely dazzling existence in the entire Eastern lands, or even the entire continent. Even their Blue Dragon Hall Master's dragon soul had not reached grade 9. It was merely grade 8. However, this was already dazzling enough. Within the same cultivation level, there were very few cultivators who could be a match for their Blue Dragon Hall Master. Now that their Blue Dragon Hall Master had reached the Saint Realm, his battle prowess was even more terrifying. In one fell swoop, he had developed the Blue Dragon Hall Master into the #1 force in the 9 Netherworld realm. Moreover, among all the saints in the 9 Netherworld realm, the strength of the Blue Dragon Hall Master was undeniably the strongest. This matter needs to be reported to the Hall Master. The 6th Azure Dragon envoy also understood the seriousness of this matter. After saying those words, he led the 7th Azure Dragon envoy towards the depths of the large hall, while Mu Feng followed behind with a smile. In the depths of the Blue Dragon Hall, there was actually a huge hall. Strangely, there were stars in the night sky above the hall. Between those stars, there were many dragon shadows lingering, making it look extremely majestic. At the center of the hall, there was a red carpet. At the end of the red carpet, there was a flight of stairs. At the top of the stairs, there was a dragon-shaped throne. An imposing figure was faintly discernible as he quietly sat on the throne. Although the light in the hall was rather bright, a shadow had strangely appeared in front of this person, covering his face and making it impossible to see his appearance. Hall Master. The 6th and 7th Azure Dragon envoys and Mu Feng all lowered their heads and respectfully greeted. The soul jade of the 8th Azure Dragon envoy has shattered. A low and deep voice resounded throughout the entire hall, causing people to be unable to determine where the voice had come from. The 6th and 7th Azure Dragon envoys looked to each other, before nodding their heads and saying, "What the Hall Master said is correct. The 8th Azure Dragon envoy has indeed died. Tell me about it." The Hall Master said indifferently, "Old 10, You tell me. The sixth Azure Dragon envoy suddenly looked towards Mu Feng and said. Mu Feng did not refuse. Nodding his head, he explained everything that had happened in the Emperor's tomb. Naturally, he would not tell them about the real Mu Feng's death and the fact that the heaven insect's consciousness had taken over his body. A Rika descendant. Grade 9 dragon soul? Back then, when this child had just advanced to the Emperor realm, he already possessed the strength to fight against a 7th-layer emperor. After hearing Mu Feng's words, the Hall Master, who was originally as calm as an ancient well, gently tapped his right hand on the armrest. No one knew exactly what he was thinking at this moment. Lord Hall Master, that Zhuowen is a Rika descendant, and has even awakened a grade 9 dragon soul. This child cannot be allowed to live. Mu Feng cupped his hands and said in a serious tone. I naturally know about this matter. From what you've said, that Zhuowen had entered the Divine Spectre Academy's outer academy. Now that he has already advanced to the Emperor realm, I'm afraid that he has the qualifications to enter the inner academy. In other words, that Zhuowen should have already entered the Divine Spectre realm's inner academy. The Hall Master suddenly said in an indifferent tone. What does the Hall Master mean? Mu Feng asked in a somewhat astonished tone. The Hall Master's voice rang out once again. That Zhuowen actually has a grade 9 dragon soul. Don't spread this matter. Even if this child enters the inner academy, he will only be an ordinary official disciple, and will not be valued by the inner academy. If we casually charge him with a crime and directly capture him, I believe that the Divine Spectre Academy will not fall out with us over a single disciple. 6th and 7th Azure Dragon Envoy, this time, the two of you will head to the Divine Spectre realm and capture that Zhuowen for me. Upon hearing this, the 6th and 7th Azure Dragon Envoy were not shocked, but instead delighted. From their point of view, capturing that Zhuowen would definitely be an easy task. After all, that Zhuowen had obtained quite a few good things in the Emperor's tomb, including profound saint artifacts. While capturing that Zhuowen, the two of them would also be able to plunder some good things from his body. The two of you should make your preparations. After which, you will head to the Divine Spectre realm. The Hall Master said in an indifferent tone. Yes. The two of them cupped their hands, bowed and walked out. Very quickly, only Mu Feng and the Hall Master remained in the hall. Do you know why I asked you to stay? The Hall Master asked in a deep voice. Mu Feng's eyes flickered, and the corners of his mouth turned somewhat unnatural as he said, This subordinate does not know. The Hall Master took a deep look at Mu Feng and said, Actually, Mu Feng's soul jade has also shattered. In other words, Mu Feng's soul has already vanished into thin air. However, you have now appeared in front of me. Speaking until here, Mu Feng immediately fell into silence. His eyes slowly narrowed, and the muscles in his entire body tensed up, while his pupils gradually turned pitch black. The Emperor's tomb exists in the Sea of Misery. Do you really think that this Hall Master does not know anything about it? There should be a heavenly insect clone that came from the Central Plains sealed in that Emperor's tomb, and the owner of that Emperor's tomb is also from the Central Plains. The Hall Master continued to speak, minding his own business. You actually know about it. Then, with your strength, obtaining the inheritance of the Emperor's tomb should not be easy, right? Why don't you take action? Mu Feng said in a low voice. Chapter 1307. Qing Longzi Haha. The saints of the Eastern lands are all in the 9 Netherworld realm. The 9 Netherworld realm doesn't only have the Dragon Netherworld realm, but there are also 8 other Netherworld realms. However, the other saints haven't made a move yet, the Hall Master said indifferently. Sky Insect narrowed his eyes. He also realized that something was wrong. The Emperor's tomb was so famous in the Bitter Sea that it was impossible for the cultivators of the 9 Netherworld realm to not know about it. However, the cultivators of the 9 Netherworld realm rarely came out to explore the Emperor's tomb. He knew that with the strength of a saint, if they entered the Emperor's tomb, they could obtain the inheritance of the Bai Fang and even control such a huge structure like the Emperor's tomb. However, such a thing had not happened in the past 1,000 years. Why? Sky Insect was still puzzled. The Hall Master, who was hiding in the shadows, laughed. This was the first time he had laughed. His laughter was like an owl, cold and shrill. It was extremely ear-piercing. The primal Chaos Temple has a huge influence in the Central Lands. Although a profound Saint Master is not very important to the primal Chaos Temple, his sudden disappearance naturally attracted the attention of the people inside. So the primal Chaos Temple sent people to the Eastern Lands to find that old fellow by Fang? Sky Insect asked in a deep voice. The Hall Master did not admit or deny it. He said indifferently, "It should be said that the primal Chaos Temple sent 4 people to the Eastern Lands, the Southern Barbarian Lands, the Western Regions, and the Northern Lands respectively. The one who was sent to the Eastern Lands was also a profound Saint Master. Coincidentally, the profound Saint Master who came to the Eastern Lands entered the 9 Netherworld realm as soon as he arrived. He did not know about the Emperor's tomb in the Bitter Sea. Although the saints of the 9 Netherworld realm have discovered the extraordinariness of the Emperor's tomb, no one acted rashly because of the primal Chaos Temple's people." Sky Insect nodded and said with fear, "Then where is that profound Saint Master now?" "In your Dragon Netherworld realm?" The Hall Master shook his head and said, "That profound Saint Master's whereabouts are extremely mysterious. Furthermore, he has many formation Dao techniques. I do not know his exact whereabouts. However, I am the Dragon Netherworld realm's master. If that Saint Master were to appear in the Netherworld realm, I would naturally know. However, I have not sensed his presence." Tian Jiyu relaxed a little when he heard this. The Primal Chaos Divine Temple had something that was specially designed to deal with him. If he were to meet the Xian Saint Master, he would definitely be forcefully sealed in his current state, and he would not be able to escape. "It's because of the existence of the profound Saint Master that you didn't take action to take down the Emperor's tomb?" Sky Insect still didn't quite believe it. "That's one of the reasons. Also, the owner of the Emperor's tomb is only a profound Saint Master. Even if I seize the Emperor's tomb, it won't be of much benefit to me, who is also a saint. Moreover, if the Primal Chaos Temple finds out, it will be difficult to deal with. Therefore, the Emperor's tomb is not worthy of me fighting for. Of course, it would be best if my subordinates could seize it." The Palace Master's voice was extremely calm. "Then why are you telling me all this now?" Celestial Worm asked coldly. The Hall Master suddenly smiled and said, "The Primal Chaos Temple is an extremely large organization in the Central Plains. Even my Blue Dragon Hall is probably extremely insignificant before it. However, something that the Primal Chaos Temple has sealed with such caution probably isn't simple at all. I just want to cooperate with you. What do you think?" "Cooperation? How do you want to cooperate?" Tian Gu's black chi slowly receded as he stared at the Palace Master with his pitch-black eyes. "You should be thinking of recovering your strength, right? I can help you with that. However, after you recover your strength, you have to help my Blue Dragon Hall unify the 9th Netherworld realm." At this point, the Palace Master's voice, which was originally as calm as an ancient well, fluctuated slightly. There was even a trace of suppressed excitement. "Unify the 9th Netherworld realm? Isn't your Blue Dragon Hall already the strongest organization in the 9th Netherworld realm?" Tian Jiyu asked in confusion. However, the Palace Master shook his head and said, "Just as you said, although the Blue Dragon Hall is the strongest in the 9th Netherworld realm, it is still far from being able to completely suppress the other 8 Netherworld realms. Just the Divine Netherworld realm alone isn't something that my Dragon Netherworld realm can take down. We can only suppress it. The Divine Netherworld realm was the closest organization in the 9th Netherworld realm to the Dragon Netherworld realm. Furthermore, the Divine Academy's inner court was filled with geniuses. They were already a threat to the Dragon Netherworld realm, so the Blue Dragon Hall Master naturally didn't want to see the Divine Academy grow, nor did he want the other Netherworld realms to threaten his position as the overlord of the Dragon Netherworld realm. If he wanted to do that, he could only use thunderous methods to make the other 8 Netherworld realms submit to the Dragon Netherworld realm. However, the Dragon Netherworld realm couldn't do that yet. However, Tian Gu's arrival gave the Blue Dragon Hall Master hope, so he decisively proposed a cooperation. However, Tian Jiyu sneered and said, You mean to say that you want me to be your hired thug? If you want to borrow my power, I'm naturally willing. However, you and the entire dragon netherworld realm must listen to me. Tian Jiyu was an existence with absolute pride. How could he possibly listen to someone else's orders, let alone be someone else's hired thug? Looks like you don't know the situation you're in. The hall master's voice turned cold. Qing Longzi, wake this guy up. A frightening aura rushed out from deep within the large hall after these words were spoken. In an instant, the air in the entire large hall stilled. A wave of oppressive pressure, which was just like countless mountains, appeared extremely heavy and vast. Tian Gu's eyes turned cold. Soon after, he saw a corridor appear behind the throne in front of him. A tall figure walked out from the dim corridor, step by step. With every step that the figure took, a clear dragon roar sounded. It was as if countless dragon roars and tiger roars were contained under his footsteps. Moreover, the strange footsteps caused Tian Gu's heart to faintly tremble. His breathing immediately became much more rapid. This is the power of laws. You're also a saint. However, your aura is much weaker than a saint, but you have the aura of Saint Rune laws on your body. You're actually an invincible Emperor Lord. Tian Jiyu forcefully calmed his rapid heartbeat. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the approaching figure. He could not help but cry out in surprise. When the figure completely walked out of the corridor, Tian Jiyu finally saw the true appearance of the tall figure. The person was about 24 or 25 years old. He had a head of thick green hair and a pair of bright eyes that emitted a frightening indifference. However, this person's appearance was extremely ordinary, but his body possessed a special aura. Even if he stood in a crowd, he would not be ignored by others. Instead, he would stand out like a crane in a flock of chickens. This aura was very unique. The person did not say much. He merely nodded at the blue dragon hall master on the throne, then his indifferent gaze fell on Tian Jiyu. The hall master hopes that I can wake you up. As he spoke, he suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground. Immediately, the sound of the stomp was like a dragon's roar that filled the sky. A terrifying sound wave turned into a huge dragon that shot towards Tianzhong. Swoosh! The moment the dragon-shaped sound wave surged over, the person also moved. He took one step at a time, quickly closing in on Tian Jiyu. Every step he took was able to emit a clear dragon roar. Tian Gu's expression changed slightly. Black qi surged out from his body, turning into a large black blade that was dozens of feet long. Tian Jiyu held the large black blade in his hand. With a sharp cry, he swung the blade. Boom! When the large black blade slashed on the dragon-shaped sound wave, Tian Jiyu was stunned to discover that the dragon-shaped sound wave was transparent. It passed through his blade and poured into his ears. Ugh! The terrifying sound wave continued to stir in his ears, causing him to involuntarily spit out a mouthful of blood. Blood flowed out from his ears as he retreated a few steps. Dragon centipede! The moment Tian Jiyu retreated, the young man had already rushed in front of him. His right palm gently swatted out, emitting a strange frequency. Subsequently, thousands of dragon roars sounded from his palm. In a whirlpool shape, it heavily smashed into Tian Gu's chest. Boom! Tian Jiyu groaned and flew backwards, landing heavily at the edge of the hall. The aura on his body rapidly withered, becoming extremely weak. Cough cough cough. Wait, I'll cooperate with you. Just as Tian Jiyu was barely able to stand up, the young man took another step forward. The entire hall was filled with deafening dragon roars. Tian Gu's expression changed drastically as he hurriedly begged for mercy. His injuries were too severe. Not only had he gone through the burial array, but he had also been crushed by the war god portrait. He only had a sliver of consciousness left, so how could he be a match for the young man who had comprehended the Saint Rune law? The young man did not stop. He was acting under the orders of the Blue Dragon Hall Master, so he naturally would not stop because of Tian Gu's words. The young man once again closed in on Tian Jiyu. He lifted his right leg and swept it out. The whistling wind turned into a huge dragon and kicked at Tian Gu's face. Qing Longzi, that's enough. When the young man's right leg was several inches away from Tian Gu's face, The hall master's voice rang out. The young man's right leg immediately stopped, and he very naturally placed his right foot down as he slowly took a few steps back. Tian Jiyu stared at the young man in front of him in fear. He asked, "What Saint Rune law have you comprehended? Why does every step contain the sound of a dragon's roar?" "The law of dragon's roar is accompanied by a powerful dragon's roar in my attacks. It has the amplification effect of sound waves, and it can also use the sound waves to disrupt my opponent's mind and hearing," the young man said without batting an eyelid. "The law of dragon's roar. Looks like it's an extraordinary power of law," Tian Jiyu said in surprise. There were many types of Saint Rune laws. There were ordinary laws, and naturally there were special laws. The law of dragon's roar that the young man had comprehended was a special power of law. Generally speaking, it was much more difficult to comprehend a special power of law than an ordinary power of law. The young man's talent was clearly extremely powerful and terrifying to be able to comprehend the special law of dragon's roar. Chapter 1308. Bottom of the Nine Peaks. Tian Gu's face froze a little when he heard that. His expression turned a little ugly as he coldly snorted, "I can cooperate with your dragon wasteland, but you must do your best to help me recover." "Of course. If another heavenly saint-level expert can appear in our dragon wasteland, we will be able to suppress the other 8 great netherworld factions. Our dragon wasteland will naturally cooperate with you. However, for the sake of restraining both of us and not breaking the contract, we still need to sign a contract." The hall master smiled faintly. With a flick of his finger, he took out an ancient scroll. There were many symbols floating on the surface of the scroll. He opened the scroll and slid his finger across his thumb. A drop of blood appeared on his thumb, and he pressed his thumb into the scroll. After doing all that, he tossed the scroll to Tian Jiyu and said indifferently, "This is a contract scroll. With this layer of protection, there will be no mistakes in our cooperation." Tian Jiyu narrowed his eyes. However, when he saw the chilliness in the hall master's eyes, he knew that the latter had no other choice. Hence, he followed suit and dripped his blood onto the scroll. After which, he tossed it to the hall master. "Haha. I hope that our cooperation will go smoothly. In the future, you will be the 10th Azure Dragon Envoy of the Blue Dragon Hall. Do not reveal your identity as Tian Jiyu so easily." The hall master laughed out loud. He was quite satisfied with Tian Gu's actions. "All right, since the contract has been signed, I will take my leave first. Also, send someone to arrange a place for me to stay. At the same time, I need flesh and blood energy to recover," Tian Jiyu said with an evil smile. The hall master smiled faintly. "I naturally know that. I will order someone to arrange a place for you to stay. As for your recovery, I have my own plans. Don't worry. Since that is the case, that would be for the best." Tian Jiyu nodded. Soon after, he ignored the hall master and left the hall. Watching the figure gradually disappear into the distance, the originally silent Qing Longzi suddenly said in a deep voice, "Hall master, this Tian Jiyu is not easy to control. Cooperating with it is no different from asking a tiger for its skin." The hall master shook his head. "You don't know much about Tian Jiyu. This thing is extremely terrifying. Even if it is only a clone, it is difficult for us to control it. If you plan to control this Tian Jiyu, I'm afraid that you will be disappointed in the end. All we need to do is cooperate with it." Within the divine nether realm, Moyan and Bai Yang led Shuowen's group into the inner courtyard. What a huge mountain! When everyone arrived at the foot of the mountain in the inner courtyard, only then did they discover how enormous the mountain peak that stood in the endless mountain range was. They stood at the foot of the mountain and raised their heads to look at the mountain peak, but they actually discovered that they were completely unable to see the end of the mountain peak. The 9 mountain peaks were arranged in a ring shape, and each mountain peak was separated by a distance of 1,000 miles. Above the mountain peaks, there was a white mist lingering around. Zhuowen and the others were even able to see that there were numerous figures moving about on the mountain paths at the waist of every mountain. They were probably the inner court disciples that were moving about on the mountain paths. At the center of the 9 mountain peaks was an enormous circular empty space that spanned thousands of miles. There were countless buildings on the empty space. There were unique pavilions, elegant tiled houses, quiet bamboo buildings, simple wooden houses and various other buildings scattered across the empty space in a picturesque manner. That is, Buddhist Zhuowen pointed at the buildings on the empty space in the middle of the 9 mountain peaks and asked in a somewhat astonished manner. That is the heart of the 9 mountain peaks. It is the gathering place of the official disciples and nominal disciples of the inner courtyard. Moyen and Bai Yang explained. Zhuowen, there are not only nominal disciples and official disciples in the inner courtyard. Above these 2 types of disciples, there are also core disciples and direct disciples. Only core disciples and direct disciples can enter the 9 mountain peaks. The position of direct disciples is much higher than the core disciples. They can receive personal guidance from the peak master of each mountain peak. Of course, their strength and talent are naturally 1 in a million. Moyen Wushang, who was standing beside Zhuowen, suddenly opened his mouth to explain. After all, she was the granddaughter of Moyen and Bai Yang. Although she had never entered the inner courtyard before, Moyen and Bai Yang had told her about the matters of the inner courtyard. Therefore, she knew more about the inner courtyard than a layman like Zhuowen. Oh, there are actually core disciples and direct disciples above the official disciples? Zhuowen frowned slightly. He was rather astonished. Soon after, he asked, "Then how do I advance to become a core disciple?" If you want to advance to become a core disciple, you naturally have to choose from among the official disciples. Only when your talent and strength are recognized can you become a core disciple and enter the corresponding mountain peak. Moyen and Bai Yang smiled and explained, "Zhuowen, although you have already been accepted as a nominal disciple by the Sky Capital Peak, this nominal disciple does not have a fixed mountain peak. Only after you become a core disciple will you have the right to choose the corresponding mountain peak to cultivate. The 9 mountain peaks each have their own characteristics. Although the Sky Capital Peak is the strongest among the 9 mountain peaks, it is not necessarily the most suitable. When you enter the inner courtyard, you can learn more about the 9 mountain peaks and choose the most suitable mountain peak for you to cultivate." Moyen and Bai Yang naturally knew how strong Zhuowen was. With Zhuowen's strength, it was inevitable for him to become a core disciple. They even believed that Zhuowen could be promoted to a direct disciple in a short period of time. After all, at Zhuowen's age and cultivation, it was rare for him to possess a strength comparable to a 7th-level emperor. Even in the inner courtyard, it was rare. "Dean, aren't you going to see the old man of the Sky Capital Peak? Although we are not core disciples, we should be qualified to enter the Sky Capital Peak with you, right?" Zhuowen looked at Moyen and Bai Yang and said somewhat excitedly. Looking at Zhuowen's appearance, how could Moyen and Bai Yang not know what this brat was thinking? He probably wanted to see Mu Chunxue as soon as possible. Moyen and Bai Yang smiled and said, "I will naturally bring you to the Sky Capital Peak. However, I can only bring 2 people. If there are too many people, it will be inconvenient." Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. His gaze fell on the people behind him and said, "Dean, can they also join the inner courtyard and become nominal disciples? With my recommendation, it will naturally not be difficult to become a nominal disciple of the inner courtyard. Moreover, many of your friends are Emperor Realm cultivators. Even if they become official disciples, the inner courtyard will be very welcoming. However, are your friends willing to join the inner courtyard?" As Moyen and Bai Yang spoke, their gazes fell on Lu Hantian, Lord of Taimo, Elviatao, Luoxing, and Qing Lian. These 5 people came with Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen planned to join the inner courtyard, these 5 people's thoughts might not necessarily be the same as Zhuowen's. Big Brother Hantian, Taimo, Brother Elvi, Luoxing, and Qing Lian, do you all plan to join the inner courtyard? Zhuowen asked the 5 people. Lu Hantian shook his head and smiled. "Zhuowen, the inner courtyard is not suitable for me. After all, I like to be free and unfettered. You can join the inner courtyard first. I plan to walk around the divine spectre realm. Who knows, I might have a fortuitous encounter. Haha." On the other hand, Elviatao, Qing Lian, and Luoxing looked at each other and stood beside Lu Hantian. Elviatao said, "Zhuowen, I plan to cultivate with Uncle. As for Qing Lian and Luo Xing, they stared at Zhuowen with complicated eyes. They naturally knew that Zhuowen had come to the Divine Spectre Realm's inner courtyard with great difficulty, mainly for one person. Moreover, it was a woman. This woman's name was Mu Chenxue. They did not want to disturb Zhuowen and Mu Chenxue, so they planned to take the initiative to avoid that scene. They also chose not to join the inner courtyard. Grand Demon Lord shook his head. The inner court wasn't suitable for a demonic cultivator like him, so he naturally couldn't join the inner court. That would only delay his progress. Since that's the case, I won't force you. I hope that Big Brother Hantian and you can take a good look around the Divine Spectre Realm. When the time comes, you can come to the inner courtyard to visit me often. Although he was slightly disappointed by Lu Hantian and the others' tactful rejection, Zhuowen naturally would not force them. Everyone had their own choices. Definitely. Zhuowen, we do not plan to join the inner courtyard, so we naturally cannot stay here for long. We will leave first, and when the time comes, if you need us for anything, just use the communication jade symbol paper to contact us, and we will naturally come to meet you. Lu Hantian looked deeply at Zhuowen, took a few steps forward, and heavily patted Zhuowen's shoulder with both hands, and said in a deep voice, "Definitely." Zhuowen also replied cautiously. After LV Itao, Luo Xing, and Qing Lian bid farewell to Zhuowen, the four of them directly left the inner courtyard. As for the lord of the inner courtyard, he did not leave. He came to Zhuowen's side and said in a low voice, "Master, in the 9 Netherworld realm, the most suitable place for devil cultivators is the desolate Nether realm. This old servant will wait for you to resolve this matter, and then I plan to go to the desolate Nether realm with your Devil Dao clone to cultivate." Zhuowen nodded. When he first entered the 9 Netherworld realm, he had already discussed the matter of going to the desolate Nether realm with the lord of the inner courtyard. However, Zhuowen planned to first come to the inner courtyard to deal with the cold poison in Mu Chenxue's body, and then let the Devil Dao clone leave. After all, the Devil Dao clone was the strongest clone besides the main body. It was many times stronger than the Buddha Dao clone, so bringing it along with him would naturally be an additional layer of protection. Wushang, Qing Yin, and Zhuowen are already nominal disciples. You can enter the bottom of the 9 peaks and choose a residence. As for Jianan, Gatha, and Mo Lingtian, you 3 haven't registered your identities yet. Follow me to the bottom of the 9 peaks to register first. Moyan Bai Yang waved his sleeve and led Zhuowen and the others to the bottom of the 9 peaks. The bottom of the 9 peaks was indeed very large. Zhuowen estimated that the open space should be more than half the size of Excellent Spirit Island. The entrance of Moyan Bai Yang and the others naturally attracted the attention of many people in the open space. However, when they felt the aura of the intermediate Emperor realm from Moyan Wushang, many people showed fear and respect in their eyes. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.